A man in Spain wakes up alone in a hospital, the year showing 2027 on every device. Yet the world around him is frozen in 2020, with entire cities completely empty. Astronomers captured a black hole's corona the size of our solar system, only to find flickers of light behaving in unexplainable ways. And in the middle of Patagonia, a camera trap caught descending lights, moving at nearly 600 miles per hour, what locals call the bad lights. So there's this guy, Unicoso Braviente, on Instagram, he's got a pretty insane story. He says that he woke up in a hospital in Valencia, Spain, completely alone. No clue who he was or how he got there. Even stranger, all the electronics read 2027. He found his hospital records and discovered that he'd been admitted on February 10th, 2021, unconscious with a high fever. Now, he's been posting all these short videos exploring the city, but it's always empty. Hospitals, police stations, fire stations, metros, airports, highways, all totally void of people. Of course, folks online constantly call him out for faking it, but some of his posts are pretty intriguing. He films himself in restricted areas, even taking cars, motorcycles, and jewelry. On March 23rd, he found an old Spanish Civil War bomb shelter. In it, he found a folder. And in that folder was some very strange information pertaining to him. It said he was trapped in some other dimension between 2021 and 2027. He'd been part of some secret mission. There was also blueprints for a time machine. The folder had equations and diagrams that eventually seemed connected to a particle accelerator at the Valencia Physics Institute. Now, it's all pretty outlandish, but it does make for a pretty interesting watch. Is this dude really posting videos from some alternate dimension he's trapped in? I mean, I'd love to think that, but if nothing else, it's very creative. Astronomers recently got an incredible look at a black hole called RxJ1131, and the photo they captured is pretty cool. The black hole itself can't be seen, but the superheated gas around it, called the corona, stretches about as far as our entire solar system. When researchers looked closely at the photo, they noticed tiny flickers in the light that didn't make sense. They were only able to see this level of detail because a galaxy sitting between us and the black hole kinda acts like a giant zoom lens. The galaxy's gravity bends and magnifies the light from the black hole, creating multiple images and letting astronomers spot details they normally couldn't. Lead researcher Mattis Ryback said, quote, "Within a few days of looking at the data, we realized, okay, this does not look right. The flickers weren't coming from the black hole. They appeared independently across the images. Turns out that individual stars in the foreground galaxy were briefly magnifying different parts of the corona. By studying these flickers in the photo, the team could map the corona and even get hints about the black hole's magnetic fields. So the point is, they're getting to learn a lot about this black hole through these images. And if we know anything about black holes, it's that we really don't know a whole lot. Black holes are incredibly mysterious. What happens to things that are pulled in? Where do they go? Do they connect to other parts of the universe? Could they be portals to parallel universes? At this point, we have no idea. It was just after midnight on January 21st in Chile's Patagonia region. Quiet, empty, middle of nowhere. A wildlife camera trap set up by the University of Magallanes to study animals suddenly snapped 3 photos in the span of 2 seconds. What shows up isn't an animal though. It's a set of bright descending lights. According to biologist Alejandro Kush, quote, "Apparently these lights were initially distant, approached and remained in front of the camera, dazzling it in a movement that appears to be descending." Now, this camera wasn't near a road or houses. It was in a meadow, far off from anything man-made. And these traps are designed to prevent tampering. They've got infrared, motion sensors, so this is pretty strange. But it's not the first time strange lights like this have been reported. Locals have talked about what they call bad lights. For generations they've talked about it, describing them as spirits crossing the fields at night. Scientists and UFO researchers have both looked at these photos. Some think it could be a rare plasmoid, kind of like a ball of plasma similar to ball lightning. Thing is, there were no storms, no conditions at the time that would have caused something like that. UFO researcher Freddie Alexis ran tests and calculated that if it was a distant flying object, it was moving at around 590 miles per hour. In the small town of Taos, New Mexico, people have been hearing a strange sound since the early 90s, a low-frequency hum, like a distant engine running, a hum that never seems to go away. Not everyone hears it, but for those who do, it's constant. Where does it come from? Well, that's the mystery. But the people who hear it report headaches, insomnia, and just overall dread, like something's just off. The government has sent scientists to investigate. They've recorded the environment, tested the soil, the air, everything, but they couldn't find what was actually causing it. The hum isn't picked up by microphones or equipment, so it's basically impossible to study. It's almost like it's happening inside the victims' bodies, which is about as terrifying as it sounds, no pun intended. Now, there are theories as to what this could be. Electromagnetic interference, underground drilling, some sort of secret military technology, but is it possible people are hearing something even stranger than that? Like an echo from another dimension? Maybe the hum isn't a sound at all, but more of a frequency from another place, something leaking in. Just a thought. This story popped up on Reddit a couple years back from a user who deleted their account shortly after posting. Here's what they wrote. I've lived in the same apartment for about 4 years. It's nothing fancy, 1 bedroom, open kitchen, small balcony, but about 2 weeks ago I came home from work and noticed something weird. The door handle felt different, like it was just slightly lower than I remembered. Same styles, same lock, just off. When I walked in, everything looked normal at first, but my keys were in a different bowl than I usually leave them. I thought maybe I was just tired. But then I noticed my bookshelf. There were 2 books on it that I don't own. One of them was a collection of short stories by Ray Bradbury that I'd been meaning to buy but hadn't yet. The other was a guidebook for a city I've never been to. I asked my girlfriend if she bought them over. She said no. I called my landlord just to be sure no one had entered while I was at work. He checked. Nothing. Since then, a few other tiny things have changed. A painting in the hallway is an inch higher. My phone background changed to a photo I don't remember taking. I know how this sounds, but it feels like I came back to a version of my life that's almost the same, just not quite. Guys, I can't speak to the validity of stories like this on Reddit. If you are experiencing things like this, go to a doctor. Just, some advice. In December of 1900, 3 lighthouse keepers stationed on the remote Flannan Isles off the coast of Scotland vanished without a trace. When a relief crew arrived after a storm had delayed them, they found the lighthouse empty. Everything inside was undisturbed. Clocks had stopped, meals were left on the table, and one of the men's coats was still hanging on a hook. The only clue was a logbook entry mentioning a violent storm, but the weather had actually been pretty calm the day they supposedly wrote it. No bodies were ever found. The official explanation is that a massive wave may have swept them out to sea, but that doesn't add up. Why were there no signs of struggle, no debris, nothing washed up? It was like they just stepped off the island and vanished. For decades, amateur astronomers and conspiracy theorists have pointed to something strange orbiting Earth, an unidentified object known as the Black Knight satellite. The story really kicked off in the 50s when both the US and Soviet Union detected something unusual in orbit. It wasn't one of theirs. It didn't match the movement of any known satellites at the time. And then there's the really weird part. In the 70s, images taken during a NASA mission seemed to show this strange, jagged object in orbit, and it didn't look like space junk or any known satellite. Some believe it's been up there for 13,000 years, sent by an ancient civilization or aliens as a monitoring device. Nikola Tesla himself claimed to have received a repeating signal from space in the 1890s, and some now connect that to this. No one knows exactly what it is. NASA says the object in the photos is just a thermal blanket that came loose during a mission, but that explanation doesn't sit well with people who've followed the story for decades. News of this just came out the other day. Last October, off the coast of Yemen, a US Air Force drone captured something no one can really explain. A leaked video, handed anonymously to Congressman Eric Burleson, shows what he called an orb hovering over the water. An MQ-9 Reaper drone locks onto it and launches a Hellfire missile, one of the most destructive weapons in the US arsenal. These things are designed to shred tanks. But in the footage, the missile smashes directly into the orb and nothing happens. Journalist George Knapp described it during a hearing, saying, quote, "That's the Hellfire missile smacking into the UFO and just bouncing right off, and it kept going." The impact seemed to nudge the object slightly, even knock some debris loose, but then it just corrects its path and carries on fine. 3 military veterans confirmed what everyone was thinking. There's no human technology that could take a direct hellfire hit and stay intact. The Department of Defense, when pressed, refused to comment. Burleson didn't speculate on exactly what the object was, but he made it clear that this was not normal. Did some kind of black hole open this girl's apartment? So this woman had a very strange incident involving her Apple Pencil. Seems there was some sort of glitch, but not the type of glitch tech support could help you with. So she talks about how she only has one Apple Pencil, has only ever had one Apple Pencil, and it's immediately recognizable because it was damaged by a dog. She also kept her Apple Pencil in the same place, the case on her desk by her iPad, but one day a second Apple Pencil suddenly turns up in her apartment and it's got the same bite marks. Now, if we're to assume this story is true, that is pretty dang strange, but stuff like this happens. I think we've all had an experience in the same kind of vein, finding two of something you thought you only had one of, personal belongings going missing and then turning up in a very obvious spot, stuff like that. What's going on? I can't say for sure, but is it possible that different realities briefly cross over and sometimes items from some parallel version of reality get left behind? I don't know. Back in 1995, NASA pointed the Hubble Space Telescope at what looked like the most boring spot in the sky, an area of darkness in the constellation Ursa Major, where there didn't seem to be anything at all. They left the shutter open for 10 days straight, and when the image came back, it shocked everyone. That quote-unquote empty patch of space was actually packed with thousands of galaxies, not stars, not planets, entire galaxies, each one holding billions of stars. The photo became known as the Hubble Deep Field, and it's still one of the most incredible space images ever taken. It's crazy how far away some of these galaxies are. We're talking about light that left them more than 12 billion years ago, meaning we're literally looking back in time almost to the beginning of the universe. And this was just one tiny piece of sky. Astronomers compared it to looking through a straw. They later repeated the experiment with newer cameras, creating the Ultra Deep Field and the Extreme Deep Field, which revealed even more distant galaxies. Some of the faintest smudges in those pictures are the oldest galaxies ever seen. In this next clip, a group of people are hanging outside when they notice something strange. It's the middle of the night, but all of a sudden the sky lights up bright blue, like it instantly turned into daytime. And then, just as quick, everything snaps back to darkness. And yeah, there's a storm rolling in, you can see heavy clouds and faint flashes of lightning in the distance, but this was clearly not a normal lightning strike. The whole sky lit up so bright it looked like the sun had risen for a few seconds before disappearing again. And finally, this strange video was posted by a girl who seems to be experiencing something mysterious in her backyard, in that it changes when she goes from her balcony to the ground floor. And then she opens the back door and steps outside, and so as you can see, the backyard looks totally different from the view we saw on the balcony. Where did all the garbage go? Now, assuming this isn't a hoax, which is always possible, this is a pretty strange situation. But speaking of garbage though, I don't know if she had a party the night before or something, but dear God, what is with all that trash? Don't live like that. Raccoons are gonna get into it. Must stink. Over the last few decades, thousands of people have vanished in national parks and forests across North America. Some of these cases are a lot stranger than others and share some eerie patterns. The person disappears suddenly, often in the middle of a group, only to be found, if they're found at all, in places that had already been searched, sometimes miles away, sometimes in impossible locations like high cliffs or extra dense parts of the woods that would be super hard to reach even with gear. And in some of these cases, the missing person reappears with zero memory of where they've been or how long they were gone. Former police officer David Paulides has been collecting these cases under what he calls Missing 411. He specifically filters out incidents with logical explanations so that what's left are stories that truly don't make sense. In some reports, tracking dogs have refused to follow the scent or get visibly spooked. Clocks act strangely, storms roll in out of nowhere, and in a few extreme examples, the person claims they were watched or lured by something they couldn't quite explain. One theory is that these people aren't just getting lost, they're slipping through cracks in reality. In the early 80s, rumors started circulating about strange military experiments happening at Camp Hero, an old Air Force station in Montauk, New York. The story went that there was psychic testing going on, time travel, and the opening of gateways to other dimensions. A few people had come forward saying they'd been a part of it, either willingly or as kids who were abducted into the program. According to these accounts, the government was trying to weaponize the human mind. They supposedly succeeded in creating psychic soldiers who could manipulate objects, see and hear things that were going on from very distant locations, or even open dimensional rifts. There's one story where they allegedly opened a portal too wide and something came through, something not human. Supposedly, they shut the project down after that. Another account describes a time chair, which let people travel into the past or future, but often came with disorienting side effects. Of course, there have never been any official documents that have confirmed any of this. It's easy to pass this off as an urban legend, but the thing is, some of the same people involved in these stories also had ties to MKUltra, which was very real and proven. So that's kind of given the Montauk Project a little more validity to some. As always though, what do you think? This next one goes back to 1943, in the middle of World War II. The story is that US Navy tried to make a ship invisible to radar at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. The ship was the USS Eldridge, but according to people who claim to have witnessed it, something much stranger happened. That's putting it lightly. Something cosmically horrific happened. They say the ship vanished completely and then reappeared hundreds of miles away in Norfolk, Virginia, and when it came back, the crew was not well. First off, there were a ton of them missing, and many who had shown back up with the ship were quite literally with the ship. They'd fused into the metal. The lucky ones just went insane, claiming to have seen something on the other side. The Navy has always denied that anything like this happened, but the story came to light through a man named Carl Allen, who sent letters detailing the events later. Of course, he was written off for being unstable, but the story took off anyway. There's even an X-Files episode about this one. To be fair, X-Files goes in some incredibly weird directions, so this is in no way adding validity to the story, but it does go to show just how much the Philadelphia experiment, as it came to be called, was talked about. What's interesting about this story is how specific it is, too. It doesn't really feel like your typical urban legend. It sounds more like someone trying to explain something that they don't fully understand. Who knows, maybe something strange really did happen that day. Maybe there really was an experiment that caused a breach in the fabric of reality.
What if every doodle you made was actually a window into your future self? Since age 7, Alex has been idly sketching the same man's face, beard, top knot, shaven sides throughout school and college. For 3 decades, the image remained just a doodle, nothing like his own reflection. Then, a year ago, Alex rediscovered his old notebooks and froze. The face in those drawings was now his face, down to every whisker and hairstyle detail. He'd never changed his look to match the sketches, nor had he consciously remembered drawing them, yet here they were, trapped in time. Was Alex unknowingly crafting a portrait of his future self, or did the universe slip him a glimpse from a parallel life where this was already reality? What if your next-door neighbor never existed, except in your memories? In autumn 2012, Columbus nurse Danielle Miller pulled into her driveway and saw a moving van parked next to her longtime neighbor's home. She waved and yelled hello, but no one answered. When she asked around, other neighbors were baffled. There had been no resident there for over 10 years, and county property records showed the lot vacant since 2001. Danielle even found official tax bills listing the address as unassigned, yet her smartphone photos captured the moving truck, the name on its side, and the familiar porch of the house she'd known since childhood. In a single night, the entire residence and the person she'd shared block parties with vanished from every public record. Picture stepping onto a train that, according to every schedule, shouldn't exist. In 1973, Boston commuter Mark Patterson regularly took the 7:45 p.m. line from South Station. One evening, bleary-eyed from working overtime, he boarded what he assumed was his usual train. 2 stops later, he glanced at the station sign and froze. It read Oldwick Junction, a station that shut down since the 1940s. Confused, Mark asked the conductor, who stared blankly and and slapped his ticket. "All aboard for Oldwick," he said. When Mark disembarked at his apparent destination, the platform was bustling, but the schedule board listed no trains stopping there after dusk. Maintenance crews later confirmed the rails were decommissioned decades earlier. Mark's ride remains unexplained, leading him to wonder if he accidentally hopped into a parallel timeline's commuter system. Think you remember every Sinbad movie? Think again. Ask anyone born in the late 80s if they saw Shazam, the 1990s comedy where Sinbad plays a genie granting hilarious wishes, and 9 out of 10 people will swear it's real. I've seen this movie. They recall promotional tie-in toys, VHS covers with Sinbad's face, even commercials with that unforgettable theme song. Yet no studio records exist. No scripts, no posters in Viacom or 20th Century Archives. Sinbad himself has denied starring in any such film, and no footage has ever surfaced. This Mandela effect anomaly suggests millions briefly flit into a universe where Sinbad's Genie movie actually existed, only to return claiming it never was. How did a single letter disappear from every bottle of Febreze overnight? For years, people swore they bought Febreze, an air freshener spelled Febreze. Then one day, retailers everywhere stocked Febreze, with just one E before the Z. Complaints flooded consumer forums. They changed the name without telling us. Yet corporate archives show it's always been Febreze with one E before the Z. Even longtime employees admit they remember the extra E. Was this a simple rebranding, or did millions of shoppers briefly slip into a parallel market where that second E never existed? What if a dream could order your real-world actions? College student Priya dreamed 3 nights in a row of her roommate Sarah handing her an envelope at 3:33 a.m., urging her to open it right away. The very next night at 3:33 a.m., Priya awoke to find a delivery slip tucked under her door. On impulse, she retrieved the package from the lobby. Inside was a sealed envelope labeled "Open at 3:33 tomorrow." Heart pounding, Priya obeyed and found a letter from Sarah warning Priya not to take a certain bus trip, citing a recent accident in the news. What was odd was that the next day, Priya had a trip planned on this exact bus, and in a dark twist of fate, that day and that exact ride Priya had booked did crash minutes after leaving. Priya swears she dream-walked into information from a timeline where she'd heeded Sarah's warning days earlier.
Bold Street has become a rather infamous area in Liverpool, where dozens of people have claimed to experience time slips. One story goes that a young woman named Imogen had gone shopping for some things for her sister's new baby. As she walked toward the corner of Lord Street in Whitechapel, she was excited to see a new mother care store that she hadn't noticed before. Inside, she browsed through items like baby cardigans and bibs, surprised at how cheap everything was. When she went to pay with her credit card at the front, the cashier looked confused and called the manager over. The manager turned and told Imogen that they didn't accept credit cards, only cash. Since she had none on her, Imogen left empty-handed, but when she told her mother what happened, her mom looked stunned. The mother care store had closed years ago, and the spot was now a bank, the very bank her mom used. And that's not the only weird story to come out of Bold Street. In 2006, a young man named Sean was caught shoplifting in Liverpool. While fleeing down Hanover Street, he turned into Brooks Alley, a dead end. As he caught his breath, he suddenly felt strange, like the air had thickened. He basically just waited for the security guard to follow, but no one came. Confused, Sean stepped back out into Hanover Street and instantly knew something was wrong. The street looked older. The cars were vintage. Roadworks he'd seen earlier were gone. People walked by in these outdated clothes, and there were traffic lights where there shouldn't be any. Sean pulled out his phone. There was no signal. He rushed towards Bold Street and spotted a newspaper stand. The date on the paper was May 18th, 1967. Terrified, Sean ran to a jewelry store where he pulled out his phone again, and this time it worked. Just like that, he was back in the present. Later, when he told his story to the local press, he repeated it in the exact same way every time, and while people assumed he made it up to dodge shoplifting charges, the newspaper followed up, and not only did they find his account consistent, but all the historical details he described, down to the clothes, the street layout, businesses, they were accurate for Liverpool in 1967. Even the security guard kinda backed it up. He said when he chased Sean into Brooks Alley, the kid had simply vanished. On November 9th of 1986, Spanish industrial expert Pedro Ramirez was driving from Seville to Alcalá del Guadera late at night. He knew the road well, but suddenly, after a curve, everything changed. The road widened into 3 massive lanes in each direction, surrounded by tall, strange buildings that he didn't recognize. On one side were huge glowing industrial buildings, on the other were these towering apartment buildings with 20 floors or so. None of it made sense, and things just got weirder from there. Pedro started to feel a wave of heat inside his car, along with strange voices, almost like a distant choir. One voice told him he'd been transported to another country or possibly another planet by extraterrestrials. And for the next couple hours he drove through this strange place, even stopping a couple times to walk along the roadside and study the odd grass and the bizarre traffic. Noticed that cars passed him every 8 minutes or so, like clockwork. Eventually, Pedro reached a road sign with directions to his home or where he was coming from. Well, he chose to retrace his steps, but he suddenly found himself parked in front of his house, and he had no memory of how he got there. He tried to retrace his path, but the wide roads, the buildings, and the strange signs were gone now. And somehow the trip, which should have only taken him about 30 minutes, had lasted over 3 hours, and he'd burned way more fuel than normal.
Have you ever looked at a building and seen something that couldn't belong there? Photographer Theo was snapping long exposure shots of downtown Chicago's skyline. He took 2 identical frames 10 seconds apart. Reviewing them later, he noticed in the first photo a gleaming glass tower that stood adjacent to the Sears Tower. In the second photo, same angle, same time, the tower was gone. When Theo rushed outside, the block looked unchanged. No extra skyscraper, no construction site. Neighbors had no memory of anything ever existing there. Records confirmed the plot was empty for decades. Theo insists his camera glimpsed a structure from another reality and that his lens just happened to catch its brief crossover. What if your doppelganger lives a life eerily parallel to yours, just miles away? In 2011, British IT consultant David Clark Googled his own name and found another David Clark living in Manchester with the same birthday, same middle name, and even the same job title at a rival tech firm. Intrigued, he reached out and discovered the other David had the same childhood nickname, had traveled to the same backpacking hostel in Thailand in 2005, and even shared a rare allergy to kiwi. Yet neither man had ever met or even knew of each other until that Google search. DNA testing confirmed that they weren't related. "It's looking like a mirror image of my life," David said. Was this an improbable coincidence, or did 2 parallel streams of Earth diverge, spawning twin lives in different locales? Have you ever walked into a library and checked out a book that shouldn't really exist? Librarian Maria Perez was reorganizing a decades-old archive when she stumbled on a title called The Eighth Sign of the Zodiac, published in 1978 by a local press. Curious, she tried to locate any record of the publisher or the author. Nothing. No ISBN, no reviews, no library listings anywhere else in the country. Even the author's name, Thomas Adler, turned up 0 hits. Maria flipped through the manuscript. It contained references to cultural phenomena that didn't exist until the 1990s, and when pressed, her library's old accession logs showed the book being cataloged in 1980, 2 years before anyone invented the ideas in its pages. Maria suspects the book slipped in from another timeline where those cultural milestones happened early. Could a single subway stop be the gateway to another world? New York City bus driver Ricardo Luna always ended his shift at the 23rd Street depot. One night he took a shortcut through the subway tunnel and noticed a dimly lit station sign that read 23rd Street, but the platform looked brand new, with shiny white tile and digital display boards. Ricardo walked through expecting to find the main concourse, but emerged instead onto an entirely unfamiliar street corner. Phone maps showed him near 57th Street. Panicked, he retraced his steps only to arrive back at the usual, worn-out 23rd Street exit. The renovated station had vanished. Ricardo insists he stepped into a parallel version of the subway, if only for a minute. So, This is all to say, next time you catch your own number on your caller ID, sketch a stranger's face, or ride a train that shouldn't exist, ask yourself, which reality are you really in?
To start us off today, let's talk about what exactly a parallel universe is and how they came to be known as mirror worlds. A parallel universe, simply put, is a universe that is similar to our own but also incredibly different. They exist alongside our own but follow their own unique set of laws in physics. They are endless and cover every possible scenario that could ever happen in the history of ever and beyond. I sound like Buzz Lightyear. They could be almost the exact same as our own, with the difference of one person wearing a blue shirt one day rather than a red one. Or they could be vastly different, with oceans and lands existing in completely opposite geographical locations and gravity pulling us up instead of keeping us down. Conversations regarding fate and the nature of free will turn pretty much upside down when the idea of a parallel universe gets involved. It's confusing and overwhelming, but not entirely inconceivable, suggesting that scientifically they definitely don't not exist. And here comes James with an explanation of why they probably do, other than the fact that they definitely don't. You get it.
Why exactly is our universe expanding? Well, a recent study by the Journal of Cosmology and Astroparticle Physics may have an explanation, and it relates to parallel universes. The universe is always expanding, and most scientists believe dark energy is behind the growth, but dark energy has never actually been directly observed. A recent study published in December of 2023 by researchers from the University of Copenhagen and the Tokyo Institute of Technology put forward that our universe might be expanding because it's merging with baby parallel universes. Almost like our universe is this cosmic blob absorbing other smaller universes, kind of like Galactus. Physicist Jan Ambjorn explained that, quote, the accelerated expansion of our universe caused by the mysterious dark energy might have a simple, intuitive explanation, the merging with so-called baby universes, and that a model for this might fit the data better than the standard cosmological model. Obviously, this is theoretical, but it is interesting and would explain some things. For example, it could explain the rapid inflation of our universe that it experienced right after the Big Bang. Scientists have always believed this inflation was caused by a hypothetical field called the inflation, but the new study suggests that our universe, when it was just a baby, could have been absorbed by another older universe, invites the suggestion that this expansion was caused by a collision with a larger universe. That is, it was really our universe, which was absorbed in another parent universe.
Next up, we have the scientific anomaly of dark matter, which scientists have recently begun to theorize could possibly create, or have already created, invisible parallel universes. You see, a long time ago, scientists discovered Neptune after noticing gravitational anomalies affecting Uranus, causing it to move in a strange way. Since then, scientists have noticed many stars and galaxies moving in ways that don't quite make sense, but unlike the discovery of Neptune in regards to the strange behavior, scientists have not been able to find any quantifiable reason for the anomaly, and so they theorized that there must be some kind of invisible force pulling on the stars and galaxies, the invisible force likely being dark matter. It is believed that dark matter is made up of tiny particles that have limited, if any, interaction with one another. Basically, it's the complete opposite of regular matter. The particles are shy, so shy in fact that they actively push things away from them rather than pulling things towards them. This is the same force that scientists believe is causing the universe to expand. But wait, there's more. Scientists theorize that it is possible that dark matter is not actually as boring, a relative term, as it seems, and that it might possibly contain an entire sector of hidden particles, and possibly even a hidden that is an exact copy of ours, containing hidden versions of electrons and protons, which together create hidden atoms and molecules, which combine to make hidden planets, animals, stars, and possibly even people. It's out there, for sure, but according to the theory, so is at least one, if not countless, parallel universes.
Next up, we have a very strange story about a couple whose neighbor had just recently died, but then they saw him just a couple months after reading his obituary. Did they jump into a parallel universe? You be the judge. The story comes to us from Reddit user YTay Bay. The Redditor and his wife worked in the same building, so they often walked to work together. One morning they left the house, they passed by the doctor's office because his wife had an appointment. She stopped there and he continued on to work. Nothing unusual. Now, on his route, the user noticed a familiar face in the distance. It was an old Italian man who used to sit outside his apartment, greeting neighborhood commuters. But the eerie part was, the man had died a couple months before. The Redditor crossed the street, convincing himself that it was just a lookalike. He saw the man, he knew he was dead, but dismissed it as maybe a mistaken identity. He thought nothing more of it and continued to work. Now, at work, his wife called, sounding concerned. She said, "I think I'm hallucinating." She explained she had seen their dead neighbor, sitting in his usual spot just like the husband had seen. The Redditor found this strange since he'd been reading about switching dimensions. He didn't tell his wife about it because it seemed too out there, but she suggested they might have switched dimensions. Something she would normally never say. So you're probably thinking, sure, the man they saw may have been a lookalike, but here's where it gets even stranger. They'd gone to the neighbor's funeral, seen social media posts mourning his death, but now they couldn't find any trace of him having died.
Next up, kind of going off of James's point, while it's not entirely scientific, it is incredibly interesting. It is the Mandela effect. But I am not just talking about the whole Berenstain Bears debate, or even whether or not Curious George had a tail, or if it was ever in the city rather than and the city, or if it's spelt Febreze or Febreze. It's spelt Febreze, by the way. Or Skechers, or if the Monopoly man had a monocle or no monocle, if the Fruit of the Loom logo ever had a cornucopia, if it's called Cheez-Its or Cheez-It, or even if the fact that chartreuse is actually a shade of green, not magenta, as we all remember being taught in our past. I'm talking about these Mandela effects that might have very well changed your life as you know it, like you incorrectly remembering a dead neighbor, or the results of an election and the events that played out after the fact, or recalling different laws or policies that you can distinctly remember being enacted but that in reality never existed. If you've ever experienced anything like this on a personal level and none of your friends or family can remember the events in question, you might just be in the wrong universe, but don't worry, we're happy to have you.
This next story also comes to us from Reddit, from a user Living4You95, who talks about her glasses mysteriously changing color. So in 2018, the Reddit user bought blue framed glasses from Walmart. She had blue Vans, a blue purse, tried to get as much blue stuff as possible, including the blue glasses. After having a baby a couple years after, she started feeling the blue glasses were a bit childish. She stopped taking selfies in them, but still wore them every day. Now, one day while driving home, the Redditor looked in the rearview mirror and was shocked to see her glasses were now black on the front, with only the sides being blue. She thought, like, what the heck, did my husband prank me on April 1st and I just hadn't noticed? So she texted her husband, who assured her that he wasn't pranking her. She texted her mom asking what color her glasses were. Her mom said, blue. Why? The Redditor then texted her mother-in-law, who also said they were blue, and her best friend from middle school confirmed, saying, I know they were blue. We were together nearly every day for 2 years. They were blue. The Redditor insisted they never got new glasses. They even checked old pictures on Instagram, Facebook, and her phone, and now suddenly all the glasses in the pictures were black and blue. And it's odd that people wouldn't have noticed this, because that black is pretty predominant on there.
Next up, we have cosmic background radiation and how it might be hinting at not only a parallel universe, but one that may have very well bumped heads with our own. In a distant region of space towards the constellation of Eridanus, cosmic background radiation showed evidence of a large hole in space. Yes, a literal hole in space, completely void of all types of matter, including normal matter, which makes up gas and dust, stars, planets, and galaxies. This spot it's completely empty, and it's incredibly massive, measuring 1 billion light years in diameter, making it one of the largest voids discovered to date. For comparison, the previous record-holding void was only somewhere between 250 and 330 million light years in diameter. Well, some scientists have begun theorizing that the newly discovered void, in correspondence with the other void located in the opposite hemisphere, could have been created by another universe bumping into our own and either displacing or destroying a large chunk of matter within our universe, which is terrifying. Yeah, that's just...
Next up, we have an interesting theory involving math. Never thought I'd use the words math and interesting in the same sentence, but here we are. Maybe I've switched universes. The mathematical multiverse theory suggests different mathematical structures might represent separate universes. Since there are infinite mathematical possibilities, there could be infinite universes. So think of our universe as being made entirely of math, a huge cosmic equation. Everything we see and experience, from tiny particles to massive galaxies, they can all be broken down using mathematics. So according to this theory, different mathematical structures create different universes, each with its own unique set of rules. Basically, if a mathematical structure can exist, so can a universe based on it, in theory.
Next up, we have quantum mechanics, which very existence suggests the possibility of endless parallel universes. For those of you who don't know, quantum mechanics is a branch of mechanics that provides a mathematical description for motion and interaction within subatomic particles. Concepts like quantization of energy, how much an electron can radiate or absorb, wave-particle duality, that anything can either be described as a wave or a particle, the uncertainty principle, the fact that we cannot know both the position and speed of photons and electrons with perfect accuracy, and the correspondence principle, the limit of large quantum numbers causing predictions of quantum physics to mirror classical physics, can all be used to hint towards a theory of many worlds multiverse, in which the universe splits into multiple branches anytime any decision is made, anywhere by anyone. Basically, any outcome of any event exists in its own separate universe. What's interesting about this is that it also might solve the time travel debate in relation to the bootstrap paradox as well as the grandfather paradox, which, if you've never heard of, we have a video on. And the reason why it solves this debate is because it states that if you go back and change something in the past, you haven't actually changed anything in your own universe, just simply gone and created a new one.
Alright, finally, we've covered countless unexplained disappearances on this channel from across time. Some are individuals who mysteriously vanish. Some are mass cases of vanishings, like on planes or ships. But what does this have to do with parallel universes? Well, of course, there are tons of possible explanations for people going missing. Flawless kidnappings, their bodies ending up in places that just don't get searched. Alien abductions, probably the most likely. But what about the possibility of them having crossed over to a parallel universe? It sounds pretty far-fetched, but I mean, who really knows? Maybe all these people saying they feel like they've crossed over into a different reality because things are different than they remembered really have crossed over into a different universe. And their friends and loved ones in their original universe are desperately searching for them to no avail.
Noah, the alleged time traveler from 2030. Back in 2018, this guy had taken the world by storm. Although supposedly being from 2030, he's traveled all across the spectrum to the years 2060, 1999, and the year 2120, to which he also supposedly had video proof of what it would all look like. He explains that the clip he took was from Las Vegas and showcases flying cars to tall, futuristic looking buildings, and a very peculiar looking orange sky. Noah explained, "The red clouds are global warming. You can see it's everywhere. I can remember it being incredibly hot. I'm pretty sure they are working on it in the future." He also stated that some really crazy predictions for the future, some key ones being Martin Luther King Jr.'s granddaughter will become president, scientists live on Mars, Instagram becoming a thing of the past, cures for illnesses, and finally being able to talk to aliens. Noah also disclosed taking anti-aging pills that keep him the same age throughout his journeys, since he claims that time traveling makes you gain years. Of course, no one really believed any of this, especially with the video, to most people looking like a cheap 3D rendering. One commenter even pointed out that he's using a phone from our time to show this, rather than some crazy futuristic one. Despite all this though, he took a lie detector test that really put him on the radar, and he passed it with flying colors. What he was saying came out truthfully. But then again, this wasn't done by professionals or with professional equipment, so who's to say if it means it's actually true? The deja vu and parallel universe theory. I had speculated this theory for a few years now, and I'm really happy that other people are discussing it. Majority of us know what deja vu is. A moment in our lives where we get this strange feeling that we've done something like this before. It's French for already seen, and there are some scientific theories for why this happens, such as temporal overlap. This is when the long-term and short-term memories blur together for a moment. Or subconscious familiarity, where your new surroundings have some similarities to an old one. The last being neural delays that create a false feeling that some event has occurred. But I like parallel universes theory better. To explain my favorite version of the theory, a deja vu is when your other self in a different universe and you in this universe accidentally overlap the same timelines. The two of you are living very different experiences, but for some reason we have one, or a few if you're like me, moments in time where the two timelines collide at the exact perfect moment. Our lives perfectly linked up together based on whatever choices we made to get us in that exact same moment of time. I would also love to hear your theories about this down in the comments below. This is a great way to transition into the mirror image universe theory. It could also link to the deja vu theory, but this theory specifically focuses on the moments before the Big Bang, and scientists coming up with a hypothesis that there was a universe completely mirror image to our version today. However, the only difference is that time is moving backwards in that universe. I'm not going to try and get deep with it, but the basic understanding of this theory is that the Big Bang is the center point of time, and because scientists believe in heavy symmetry within the universe, when it happened, it also created a negative version of time of our universe alongside ours. So, when you think of cracking an egg, what would happen instead in the other universe is that it would start out from the yolk on the ground and turn back into the egg. This theory started back in 2015, when some scientists were up in Antarctica researching high-energy particles. What we did know before is that there are high-energy particles coming towards Earth, which from my understanding is because our universe is constantly expanding outward. However, they discovered high-energy particles going away from our Earth in the opposite direction, as if they were going back in time. There was something pulling or stretching these particles the opposite way, as if the universe is expanding in another direction simultaneously. Let's take a brain breather with some Mandela effects. This one, specifically from Toy Story, is new to me. Do you remember Woody's catchphrase being, "There's a snake in my boot"? Because that's how I remember it, and the majority of people who grew up with it. But we were wrong, because the actual phrase of it goes, "There's a snake in my boots." It was plural, and it was never singular. But of course, the internet didn't agree with this, with the biggest reason being that it grammatically doesn't make sense. The proper sentence should be, "There are snakes in my boots." And it also doesn't help with the fact that the Woody toys that came out all say, "There's a snake in my boot." There is no plural for those. So what gives? There was only one Reddit comment claiming that Pixar confirmed it's always been boot and not boots, but I haven't been able to find an article on that. How do you guys remember it? Tell me down in the comments below. Imagine finding a watch while you're exploring a tomb. Of course, watches have been around for quite a while at this point, but what makes the famous tiny Swiss watch so special? In 2008, archaeologists discovered a remarkable piece of metal that was the size of a ring, bearing the face of a watch that was marked specifically at 10:06. On the back was the word Swiss engraved. This was found in a tomb that had been sealed away for more than 400 years, and yet this watch was only 100 years old. How is that possible? Especially when Switzerland wasn't an established country at the time. The tomb was speculated to have been created during the Ming Dynasty that ruled from 1368 to 1644, and watches were apparently not a thing in that area at the time. My question, however, though, is how sure are we that it was sealed for that long? What are the odds that someone had gone in there prior to the archaeologist, but just decided on not taking or touching anything? It's possible, but then why did they leave the watch ring? People obviously speculate that there were maybe time travelers that left it as a clue for their existence, since many of those already exist across the internet. People love to believe we live in a simulation, with major ones being caught when watching sports. This specific video, uploaded by Highlight Heaven on YouTube, arranged a variety of clips from football that feed into this simulation theory, and there were a few that stuck out to me. The first two clips involve some very synchronized movement of football players getting up. Simultaneously, at the exact same time, their movements are mirrored perfectly, down to the hand placements, to the tempo, you name it. The biggest one that people have their eyes on is when one of the football players does this really weird, almost floating maneuver to get up. They barely use their hands as they hoist themselves from off the ground, as if all their power is coming from the balls of their feet. Sure, they have the momentum of pushing upward, but after that it looks like it's all in the foot power. But I do have a theory for these weird movements, to which I feel many of you have figured out by now. Football players are constantly practicing and drilling in certain movements, right? They've also probably been practicing the quickest and most efficient way of getting up when they get tackled, with one of these ways being the weird floating technique. I'm not a football player, but I've taken movement classes where we are drilled in certain ways of getting up properly and quickly. It's definitely a neat trick that these guys do here, and I can see how it would become an optical illusion at certain angles. The man from Torid. I'm not sure how legit this story is, but still interesting nonetheless. On one sunny day somewhere in July in 1954, an ordinary-looking man arrived at Haneda Airport in Tokyo. There was nothing strange about the way he was dressed, sporting a nice suit and tie with a groomed beard. He was fairly familiar with Japanese, so no red flags thus far. It wasn't until officials noticed on his passport that he was coming from a country called Torid. There is no such thing as Torid, that we're all aware of, and when this man was confronted by police as a possible fraud or threat, he got extremely frustrated and tried to explain that it is in fact real and has been around for 1,000 years. So they got him to try and explain where on the map it was located, and apparently it was supposed to be between Spain and France, but he had no idea why it wasn't showing up on our maps, as he kept repeating he's made multiple trips to Japan before. He even had papers to support his case. However, before they could take a look at them, the man suddenly disappeared from his hotel room, one that was located on the 7th floor with no balcony. The police tried to keep him there while they figured things out, so they had no clue where he went. A lot of people use this theory to support the claims of parallel universes.
Is it possible that we're all immortal? Not in the way that you'll never age or anything like that, but in a more like you'll never die kind of way. It's called quantum immortality, and it's one of the weirder consequences of quantum physics. Here's the basic idea. Most of us have probably heard of the theory that multiple realities form from every decision we make, every situation we find ourselves in. In quantum mechanics, there's a theory that every time something happens, the universe splits, creating a parallel universe where things went the other way. For example, let's say you're walking across the street and you nearly get hit by a bus. Close call. Well, in another reality, the bus didn't miss. In another, you were nowhere near it. In another, the bus didn't even show up. Now, you, the observer, are at the center of your own timeline. Here's where the immortality aspect comes in. If you can't observe a version of the universe where you're dead, you'll always end up in the one where you survive. That means every time you should have died, you just didn't. At least you don't experience the version where you did. From your point of view, you'll always wake up in the version of reality where you lived. Sure, other people might attend your funeral in their timelines, or the ones you used to be in, but you never actually experience death. You just keep shifting into the universe where you dodged the bullet. Now, I'm not exactly sure where old age comes into this. I mean, eventually we all do die, right? But I don't know, maybe reincarnation plays into this somehow. Look, it's totally unprovable, but it's a neat idea, and at the very least, maybe there's a version of all of our lives where we make it to 100 and pass away peacefully in bed, rather than dying in some awful accident or something. Pan Am Flight 914 is a story that keeps getting passed around because, real or not, it's an interesting story. A Pan Am Douglas DC-4 with 62 people on board took off from New York, headed to Miami on July 2nd of 1955. It vanished. Radio contact was lost. and it was presumed to have crashed. But then something weird happens, just not for another 37 years. In 1992, the same plane allegedly appeared out of nowhere on the radar of an airport in Venezuela. Air traffic control made contact and the pilot sounded confused, saying they were en route to Miami and due to land at 9:55 a.m., as if no time had passed. The story goes there were witnesses who said the tower told the pilot where he was, which reportedly freaked him out. He supposedly panicked, restarted the engines, and took off again before anyone could stop him. The plane eventually landed in Miami shortly afterward, but authorities supposedly kept the incident quiet. Some versions of the story say the passengers were dazed, carrying outdated newspapers and IDs with no idea that they just jumped forward in time. But is this just an urban legend, or did something actually unexplainable happen that was quickly covered up? The Large Hadron Collider has been at the center of multiple wild theories ever since it switched on in 2008. Officially, it's a massive particle accelerator built by the European Organization for Nuclear Research, or CERN. It was created to smash atoms together at insane speeds in order to study the makeup of the universe. But there are plenty of people who think that something very strange happened when this thing was switched on, that a sort of Pandora's box was unleashed. One theory is that when the LHC fired up, there was this shift, that it either created a parallel universe or blended ours with another. The timing does kinda line up with when people started reporting strange phenomena on a big scale. The Mandela effect, for example, really exploded in popularity around the same time, but people also started sharing more personal stories on internet forums about how time just didn't seem to be moving right anymore, or how reality felt off in subtle ways they couldn't quite explain. And it didn't help that in 2016, CERN released a video of what looked like a human sacrifice ritual taking place on their grounds, which they later said was a prank. And do I believe that? Yeah, first of all, I just think that's a funny idea. I love that they went there. And I also just don't think there was a genuine ritual sacrifice captured on camera here. For anyone who is already skeptical though, they were even more skeptical after this. But what do you think? Have you noticed weird shifts in your reality since 2008? I'll give you this, it is a weirder world we're living in. A woman named Pam Reynolds was brain dead for over an hour. Somehow, she came back describing things she couldn't have possibly known. In 1991, Reynolds underwent a rare procedure called a standstill operation to remove a brain aneurysm. Her body temperature was lowered significantly, her heartbeat and brain activity were completely stopped, and her eyes were taped shut. She was clinically dead, and yet, after she was revived, she gave eerily accurate descriptions of the operating room. She even described the exact surgical tools being used and recounted conversations between doctors. That's because when she was under, she claimed that she floated out of her body and saw herself laying on the table before being pulled toward a tunnel of light. She said she met dead relatives there who communicated with her without speaking, and that she needed to be convinced to return to her body, which of course she did. But what exactly happened here? How could someone with no brain function, no sensory input, describe real-time events in such clear detail? Till this day, there's never been a definitive explanation for this. Ong's Hat was a real village in New Jersey, now abandoned. In the late 80s though, pamphlets and documents started surfacing claiming secret experiments happened there involving interdimensional travel. So a group called the Institute for Chaos Studies allegedly set up a lab in the Pine Barrens. There they built a device known as the Egg, a sensory deprivation pod meant to alter consciousness. The theory was that under the right conditions, the pod could shift someone into a parallel universe. Well, supposedly it worked. Some of the researchers vanished, remaining in some alternate version of Earth. These so-called documents circulated in zines and early internet forums. Nowadays, this is mostly seen as a hoax, and I'm sure a lot of people also saw it that way back then, but some still insist there was something strange actually going on here, that maybe, at the very least, the story was some sort of cover-up for actual experiments with, fictional elements used to discredit anything and distract people from anything disturbing that was actually happening. I don't know, what do you guys think of this one? So let's start things off with ghosts. You probably didn't think I'd be starting off like this, but I think you could make a pretty good argument for paranormal stuff like this being a sign of possible parallel universe. Almost all of us have heard someone's first-hand account of having seen something, or feeling cold spots, hearing noises that don't seem to have a logical explanation. The usual explanation, aside from the ones made by skeptics, is that these are signs of hauntings, usually a dead person who's not able to fully cross over to the other side, so they remain in this limbo between the world of the living and the dead, tied to the places they once called home. But what if these so-called ghosts aren't actually spirits or souls, but glimpses into another universe? What if what we interpret as paranormal activity could be caused by parallel universes overlapping? Imagine it like looking through a frosted window. You can see movement on the other side, shadows and shapes, but they're not really there in the way we understand it. Maybe at times in certain places, the line between dimensions gets a little fuzzy, and you catch a brief glance into a parallel world. Instead of a ghost haunting you, maybe it's just a glimpse of someone from a different version of reality. Next, we've got time slips. Ever had a moment where you're sure you were somewhere, but everyone else insists you weren't, or vice versa? Now, if this happens to you a lot, definitely see a doctor before chalking it up to what some idiot online like me says, but if you've been cleared of any early signs of dementia, then maybe something stranger could be going on. Some people think these experiences could be linked to parallel universes, the idea being that we can sometimes slip between timelines. One minute you could be at a party, the next you're back home, but with no memory of how you got there. Or you might be walking down a street and suddenly the surroundings look completely different, like you've been dropped into a past version of your city. This sounds pretty ridiculous, and I can't say that I've ever experienced anything like this, but some people say they have. You can find stories like this all over places like Reddit. Not that you should believe everything you read online, but even if a small handful of these stories happen to be true, that is pretty strange. Some people think time slips could happen when two timelines briefly overlap, and your consciousness gets caught in this switch. You're still you, but somehow you're seeing a different version of events, like a time traveler who doesn't even know that they're time traveling. Now let's talk about something a bit more sciencey, quantum entanglement. This is a phenomenon where two particles become linked in such a way that when something happens to one, the other is instantly affected, no matter how far apart they are. Yes, this really does happen, despite the fact that what I just described doesn't seem to follow the rules of space and time. It's as if the particles are somehow aware of each other across these vast distances. We still don't know exactly why this happens, and if you wanted to make the argument, which I am, it could possibly point to, at the very least, a glitch in the Matrix, similar to the parallel universes theory. A glitch in the Matrix meaning that the world around us is an illusion created by who knows what. Point is, our universe may just be one of many. Could we exist in this complex web of overlapping universes where every now and then one of the strands twitches in a way we don't understand, causing a mysterious and unexplainable phenomena like this? Alright, let's talk deja vu. Sure, this gets talked about a lot, but for good reason. It's pretty disconcerting. Every time it happens, it throws me off. I'm always left with this uneasy, existential dread for about 30 seconds before I get on with my day, but it's this brief reminder that despite everything science tells us, and as clear as the world seems at face value, there are a lot of things we just don't understand. It's eerie, but kind of humbling. How can we be experiencing a sequence of events so specific that we logically know that it's the first time we've lived it, and yet somehow there's this feeling in the pit of our stomach that, no, we've been here before, seen this play out. It's not a memory, more like something you've seen in a dream, maybe? It's vivid yet hazy at the same time. There are tons of theories on deja vu. One being that you have lived the exact moment, but in a different life. That time either runs in a constant loop, or a parallel universe running right along our own briefly overlaps and gives us that strange, uncanny feeling. Think of it like your brain momentarily accessing memories from a different version of yourself, one who's living a slightly different life, but maybe in this other version you did something exactly like what you're doing right now, and for a split second your brain glitches and pulls that memory into the current moment. You're living in the present moment, but your mind receives a kind of signal from a different timeline. So I mentioned glitches in the Matrix a bit earlier, so I want to go into more detail on that. This one is very popular online. Glitches in the Matrix are when people claim to experience weird moments where reality seems to glitch out. Like say you notice what looks to be the same person walking by twice in a row, or objects appearing or disappearing out of nowhere, just weird stuff like that. Almost like a video game that's failing to render things correctly. The idea here is that we could be living in a simulation, and every so often, the code that runs the simulation gets a little wonky. But to take it a step further, what if those glitches aren't just errors in a simulation, but signs that our universe is brushing up against another one? In theory, if parallel universes do exist, we could occasionally get a peek into them or experience moments where the fabric of space-time bends. Could be as simple as noticing a repeating pattern in your day, but your brain can't quite reconcile with what you know of reality. It's like your system glitches out because it's trying to process something from another universe that doesn't quite match up with your version.
In our number 5 spot, we have Star Wars. Luke, I am your father. Okay, this one could very well have been misconstrued over time, as people have repeated this in many movies, and it's possible that someone somewhere just decided to throw in the Luke bit so that people understood which character Vader was the father of. Makes sense. But still, in online platforms, people are convinced that at some point in time, Darth Vader said, "Luke, I am your father," instead of what is actually said, "I am your father." No Luke. Is this a sign that in another universe, Luke was actually said? I don't know. This is a bit of a weak sign for me, but others disagree. Would love to know your thoughts in the comment section below. Did the government cover this one up? In our number 4 spot, we have the triangle phenomena. The Bermuda Triangle, the Alaskan Triangle, the Nevada Triangle. These are all strange places that puzzle people around the world. These are places where planes and people have gone missing on many accounts. It could be a strange coincidence, but a lot of people believe that these disappearances are more likely a sign of a portal to another dimension. Perhaps these people and planes traveled through these portals and ended up somewhere else, as not a body or piece of the planes have ever been found from any of these places. There has to be some explanation. Either that, or it's a government special operation, or there's mythical creatures getting in the way. There are so many theories around these triangles, but the number 1 theory is that they are a sign of a parallel universe. In our number 3 spot, we have unidentified objects. Over the years, there have been a lot of unidentified objects that have popped up around the world that no one can explain. Archaeologists have discovered items that don't belong in areas that they are exploring, and at times there have even been objects that don't seem like they are a part of this world or from this world. A good example of this is a hammer that was found in London in the 1930s, and this hammer is said to be over 500 million years old. Wow, when humans weren't known to exist. There was also an object that was found that is a sort of stone-like computer that would have been from 2,000 years ago, and this object was found near a Greek island not too long ago. Many people believe these mysterious objects are traveling through dimensions and that they are a huge sign that there are universes that we are unaware of. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below. In our number 2 spot, we have Area 51. Look, it is no secret that Area 51 is the most unusual place, and it is probably one of the most guarded places in the world, but why? The government's explanation is that it's a secret army operation place. Sure, okay. If we wanted to plan future attacks or train for future wars, we will definitely need a secret place to do those things. So that's a pretty good reason, and that's why it's believable to your average Joe that doesn't bother to look into it any further. But for the person that decides to look into some of the stories that surround Area 51, man, are there many they might think otherwise. The most popular theory is that there is a parallel universe portal inside, as people in the surrounding area have reported disappearing and showing up in random locations. In our number 1 spot, we have the particle test. There is a large hadron collider that is the largest and highest particle collider and is 27 kilometers below the surface of the Earth, aka in an underground facility between the France-Switzerland border. It was originally designed between 1998 and
and 2008 by CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, as a collaboration project between 10,000 scientists and hundreds of labs and universities from over 100 different countries. It is believed that the purpose of this device was to create a black hole in reality, which may take us to a parallel universe. Regardless of what they were actually doing, they did stumble across something pretty crazy. Apparently, the scientists threw a bunch of particles around at crazy speeds and noticed that the particles disappeared for a moment, and they were able to measure how long the particles disappeared for. From this experiment, it has been assumed that the particles traveled to new dimensions or planes of existence when they disappeared. One of the scientists at CERN by the name of Aurelian Barau has even said, "The multiverse is no longer a model. It is a consequence of our models." Well, sounds like proof to me. The government's got to do a better job at hiding this.
And we're starting off the list with the bubble universes theory. So imagine the universe right after the Big Bang, acting kind of like a giant balloon, rapidly inflating. This is the main concept of the cosmic inflation theory. According to this theory, the early universe expanded extremely quickly. Now here's where it gets kind of interesting. Picture this rapid expansion like different regions of the balloon inflating at their own speeds. In some areas, inflation happens a bit faster, in others, it's a bit slower. This creates pockets or bubbles within this expanding universe, kind of like different regions on the surface of the inflating balloon. In each of these bubbles, a unique set of physical laws and conditions takes shape. Each bubble becomes its own little universe with its own rules of how things work, its own arrangement of matter, energy, and who knows what else. Next up we have cold spots. So imagine you're an astrophysicist looking at the vastness of space. Back in 2015, scientists in Hawaii noticed something strange, a huge empty patch where there should have been 10,000 galaxies. They called it a cold spot because it seemed like everything there had just vanished. Now, scientists at Durham University came up with a pretty fascinating idea about this mysterious cold spot. They think it might be because our universe collided with another universe, almost like two giant soap bubbles bumping into one another. When these universes collide, it could push all the energy and stuff out of a specific area, creating a big empty space, the cold spot. We might be living in one bubble universe out of trillions, and this cold spot could be the aftermath of a collision with another bubble universe. It's a bit like when two ripples in a pond meet and create a calm spot in the water. Alright, now this one is pretty cool, even though it has math in the title. It's the mathematical multiverse theory. This idea centers around the concept that our entire universe is like a giant cosmic equation, and every bit of it, from tiny particles to vast galaxies, can be described and understood using math. Understood by other people and not by me, because math was just... I get sick even just saying the word. That's the core idea though behind the mathematical universe theory. This theory suggests that there are countless mathematical structures and each one represents a different universe. Since there are infinite mathematical possibilities, this would also mean, in theory, an infinite number of universes. So think of it a bit like this. Our universe is just one solution to the grand mathematical equation that is existence. In this mathematical multiverse, each universe has its own unique set of rules and conditions, an infinite collection of parallel universes where physics and math can be totally different from what we know. For instance, one example I tend to use, in one universe, gravity might act in a way that pulls things sideways, while in another, it might pull things up. If you're unaware, our gravity pulls us down, but the possibilities are really endless in this theory. Next on the list, of course, black holes. I mean, we gotta talk about black holes in a video like this. Black holes are mysterious regions in space where gravity is so strong that nothing, even light, can escape their gravitational pull. In the traditional understanding, once something crosses the event horizon of a black hole, it seemingly is just gone forever, lost to the singularity at the center. But some physicists have a different idea that black holes could lead to parallel universes. It's called the wormhole hypothesis. This idea here is that a black hole could potentially connect to a white hole or another region of space-time through a tunnel-like structure called a wormhole. A white hole is a hypothetical region where matter and light are ejected, basically the opposite of a black hole. I mean, really, that is the opposite. So instead of being forever stuck inside the black hole, the matter and information falling into a black hole might be transferred through a wormhole to another region of space, or even a completely separate universe, almost acting like a bridge between our universe and a parallel one. Alright, the simulated multiverse theory. The simulated multiverse theory suggests that our entire universe is basically a massive computer simulation. Imagine our reality being like a highly advanced video game or computer program that we're just unknowingly living inside of, and everything we experience is generated by some incredibly powerful computer. Now, who could be the ones running this simulation? It could be extraterrestrial beings with highly advanced technology, or even humans from the far future running a simulation to learn about their own ancestry, like a gigantic virtual reality experiment. But if our universe is just one big simulation, there could be countless other simulations running simultaneously, each representing a separate universe with its own unique set of rules. Basically, it's just a bunch of alien children learning about us, and they're all just in their own little screens watching different versions of it. The experience of missing time. This one is a classic, especially when it comes to UFOs. There are tons of stories and cases of people driving around a desolate road late at night when they see a strange light in the sky, and then all of a sudden, hours, or sometimes even days have passed that they just have no recollection of. Missing time. Could this phenomenon be connected to parallel universes? Well, the theory is that these abductees may have actually slipped into another timeline. As for whether aliens are involved or not, who knows? Point is, something could shift in the fabric of space-time and your consciousness jumps into a new version of reality, leaving this gap in your memories. It's not so much that time was stolen from you, it's more like you temporarily just moved into another timeline, and when you returned to your own, it felt like you lost those hours. Quantum tunneling is a very bizarre phenomenon where particles can move through barriers that should, according to physics, be impossible. Picture it like a ball traveling through a solid wall instead of bouncing off it. Yes, this does happen, but the science is very hard to explain. Again though, parallel universes, could they play into this? Could particles be tunneling from one reality to another? Instead of just interacting with the particles in our universe, these particles might slip through some sort of portal into another reality. This could help explain some of the bizarre stuff we see in our world that doesn't really make sense. Random moments where the laws of physics seem to just not apply. When it comes to parallel universes, the rules we know might not work the same way, and particles that can tunnel through different dimensions, well, that could be the key to how those universes are crossing paths, even if we don't always notice. Alright, let's switch gears, head up into space. We've got all kinds of mysterious things out there. Strange lights, unexplained radio signals, objects that don't behave how we expect them to. Of course, you know where I'm going with this one, but even some scientists wonder if some of these things could be evidence of parallel universes. Take the WOW signal, for example, an unexplained radio signal detected by astronomers back in 1977 that lasted for about 72 seconds and then disappeared. No one knows where it came from or what caused it. Some think it could have come from a parallel universe, trying to communicate with ours. And yes, it sounds pretty far-fetched, and maybe it is. Maybe there's a much more mundane explanation, but also consider just how vast and mysterious space is, and how little we really understand of it. Looking at it that way, the possibility of another universe interacting with ours in some way seems pretty plausible. Every so often we hear about things that seem to appear out of nowhere. Like maybe you're in your living room, you find a book on your coffee table that you're pretty sure you didn't buy, or maybe you swear you put your keys in one place but you find them sitting in a completely different spot and no one moved them. Or the reverse, objects just disappear without a trace. Can most situations like this be chalked up to our brains just sucking at remembering things sometimes? Sure, but could there also be something else going on in very rare cases? One theory is that this could be the result of objects slipping in and out of parallel universes. Say you leave your socks sitting on the edge of your bed, but when you turn around to grab them, they're nowhere to be found. So you look all over your room only to find that they're actually sitting on your bathroom counter. What if they were simply sucked into another version of reality for a while? Maybe it was in a parallel universe for a second, but when the reality shift happens, it comes back, just not in the same place you left them. Mandela effect. The phenomenon where a large group of people remember something in a certain way only to find out that it never actually happened that way at all. I think what's so interesting about this one is that unlike stuff like deja vu or or objects going missing, situations that are a lot more likely to happen in isolation, Mandela effects are corroborated by mass amounts of people. For some context, the name Mandela effect comes from people remembering Nelson Mandela dying in the 80s, when in fact he passed away in 2013. Some people think this is a glitch in our collective memory. Like we've all tapped into a parallel universe where things happen just slightly differently. The list of famous Mandela effects is huge and just continues to grow. From the famous Bernstein Bears versus Bernstein Bears confusion to the misremembered lines from famous movies like Star Wars and Forrest Gump. It's almost like there is a version of reality that some people are still hanging on to, still remembering, even though it never actually existed in our timeline. Again, are these just examples of our collective memory not being the most reliable, or could we just possibly be momentarily connecting to another universe where things unfolded just slightly differently?
In our number 10 spot, we have Chick-fil-A. There is something called the Mandela effect that is a term that was invented to describe a situation where a large group of people remember a situation different than how it is. But of course, if you brought an entire human race into a new dimension, how else are you going to explain how so many people remember different events and situations that happened to the ones they're being presented with now? Naturally, you would invent a term to convince everyone into believing that their memories are false, and what they remember was influenced by a common eye trick or a memory trick. Like in the case of Chick-fil-A. A large group of people remember the famous restaurant without a K. I am one of those people, actually. When doing my research on this, I thought the incorrect spelling was with the K, but in fact, Chick-fil-A always had a K apparently. The thing that nobody can question me on specifically is a memory I have of looking at a Chick-fil-A sign and thinking, as a kid, why isn't there a K? So take that, government. It's a very specific thought memory that you can't influence. Who else remembers it without a K? Let me know in the comment section below. In our number 9 spot, we have Skechers. This is another label that has been questioned over the last few years by many, and it has also been attributed to the Mandela effect. Most people agree that the brand Skechers spells their name S-K-E-T-C-H-E-R-S. But actually in this reality, okay fine, perhaps maybe just in reality in general, who knows, the brand is spelt S-K-E-C-H-E-R-S. There is apparently no T. This is another situation where I personally remember it being spelled with a T. When I was younger, I remember writing about it in a report for school and I did not know how to spell it. I remember sounding it out, and then when I looked it up, I was surprised that it had a silent T. Somebody explain this memory, please. You cannot convince me that it is Skechers with no T. It just doesn't look right. I wonder at what age do people start thinking that there is no T? That'll give us a good idea as to when we got transported into a new dimension. In our number 8 spot, we have the Torid Traveler. I had to include this story in here as it is such a wonder as to why it is not talked about more. Does the government not want people to talk about this for a reason? Possibly. In 1954, there was a man who was traveling to Tokyo, Japan, when he got off the plane in Tokyo and was pulled aside by security for having a passport from a country that didn't exist. The customs officials grilled the man on why he had a fake passport and fake custom papers, and annoyed, he insisted that his passport and papers were real. He supposedly had all kinds of bank statements and documents from a country in Europe called Torid. The police pointed to an actual country called Andorra, and apparently the man insisted that yes, that is where his country is, but it is called Torid, and it's been around for thousands of years. The man was held in a hotel for several hours while the government analyzed his papers. The next morning, when the government went into the hotel room to speak with him, he had vanished back to his parallel universe, I think. In our number 7 spot, we have the case of Lorena Garcia. This is a very interesting story. I definitely think it is possible that this story was covered up, as it is a story that a lot of people do not know of and may be shocked to hear about. A woman by the name of Lorena Garcia woke up one morning to find that nothing was familiar to her. Her home, her friends, her job, she did not recognize a thing. She still looked like herself and had the same name, but her room and basically everything was different. The story made a few newspapers, but it eventually died, as it would, of course, if it is a story that a lot of people shouldn't hear about, so that we don't all start collectively putting the pieces together and questioning everything, as we probably would. People thought that she suffered from memory loss, however, all signs actually pointed to her being in perfect health, as well as nothing traumatic had occurred that would make anyone believe that theory. So, In conclusion, she probably slipped into a parallel dimension that the government didn't want us to know about. In our number 6 spot, we have the backwards universe. An experiment was done by NASA's Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, or ANITA. Anita, darling. A little 101 Dalmatians reference for ya. Gosh, I get distracted so easily. An experiment was performed high above Antarctica, where it was observed that there is a constant wind of high-energy particles coming up from the Earth, and these findings showed scientists that these particles actually traveled backwards in time, which suggests a parallel universe. Quote, low-energy subatomic neutrinos with a mass close to 0 can pass completely through Earth, but higher energy objects are stopped by the solid matter of our planet, according to this report. That means the high energy particles can only be detected coming down from space, but the team's ANITA detected heavier particles, so-called tau neutrinos, which come up out of the Earth. Is this proof of another backwards dimension? Some scientists, such as Peter Gorham, believe it is possible.
Next, we have the string theory multiverse. So scientists have a theory called string theory. Instead of thinking of particles as tiny dots, they imagine them as super tiny vibrating strings. So string theory says that there are more than just the usual 3 dimensions of space and of time that we're used to. Imagine there are extra dimensions, but they're so tiny and curled up that we can't see them in our everyday lives. Mathematicians call these curled up dimensions Calabi-Yau manifolds, which are basically complex shapes used to describe these hidden dimensions. In the world of string theory, these extra dimensions can have different configurations or setups, kind of like multiple radio stations, each playing a different song. In this case, each configuration could represent a different set of physical laws and constants, the rules that govern how things work in our universe. Our universe, in this grand scheme of things, is like tuning into one specific radio station. But according to the string theory multiverse idea, there are countless other stations out there, each playing its own unique tune, or each representing a different universe. So why does our universe have the particular rules that it does? The string theory multiverse brings in something called the anthropic principle. The principle says that the reason our universe has the specific laws it does is because those laws allow for the existence of life. If things were different, we wouldn't be here to even ponder it. Our next sciencey theory on the list is quantum entanglement. So let's imagine we have 2 particles. We'll call these particle A and particle B, and these 2 particles become entangled. This means that they're somehow connected in a way that the state of one particle instantly influences the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are. This actually happens. This is very strange because in our everyday understanding of the world, information can't travel faster than the speed of light. But with entanglement, changes in one particle's state seems to happen instantaneously in the other, even if they're light years apart. So how does this relate to the possibility of parallel universes? Well, one idea is that the particles exist in multiple states at the same time until we observe them. And when we observe one particle, it instantly affects the other particle's state, no matter the distance. Some scientists speculate that when we observed one particle and it chooses a particular state, the other particle might be choosing a different state in a parallel universe. Pretty hard to wrap your head around, but alright, this next one is also pretty trippy. See if you can wrap your head around this, because I have a hard time doing so, but the holographic multiverse theory. So for this, we need to imagine that our universe is like a giant 3D movie being projected onto a screen, and that all of that information making up this cosmic movie projection is actually encoded on the surface of that screen. In simple terms, the holographic principle is based on the idea that the information needed to describe a 3-dimensional structure like our universe can be represented in a 2-dimensional way, like a hologram. So essentially, all the details of a 3D object are somehow encoded on a flat surface. So some scientists have suggested that our universe, as we perceive it, might actually be this holographic projection, and this would mean that everything we see around us might be a kind of illusion, and the real action is happening on the screen, or the boundary of our universe. So instead of thinking of separate universes with different physical laws, the holographic multiverse suggests that all these universes, including ours, might be interconnected holographic projections, each quote-unquote projection could represent a different set of physical laws, making it seem like its own distinct universe. This would be like having multiple TV screens, each showing a different channel. These channels, or universes, might seem independent, but the information that creates them is all encoded on the same screen. Next, we have probably the most mysterious radio signal ever detected, simply known as the WOW signal. So in 1977, the Ohio State University's radio telescope received a very odd radio signal from outer space that lasted for about 72 seconds. The signal was so unique and unexpected that astronomer Jerry R. Eyman, who was reviewing the data printout, circled the signal and just wrote WOW next to it, hence giving it that name. What made the WOW signal particularly intriguing was its frequency and intensity, which didn't match any known natural source. So what was it? Well, aliens, of course, have always been brought into the conversation, but there's also the idea that the signal might be connected to parallel universes. The signal's characteristics were so unusual that some have suggested it could be a form of communication or energy transmission from a parallel universe. Lastly, we have Deja Vu. Now, this one is a bit different than everything else on this list in that it's a phenomenon we all experience relatively frequently that science hasn't been able to give a convincing explanation for, and that's led to a lot of fascinating ideas as to why it happens, including, of course, the existence of parallel universes. I say science hasn't been able to come up with a convincing explanation because, I'm sorry, but no, I do not buy that deja vu is just experiencing something similar to something you've experienced before. That is just the lamest explanation, and it seems to be the only one that the scientific world can come up with. Like, you know what we experience that's very similar day to day? Going to work, waking up, eating foods we've had before, kissing our partner if we're lucky enough to have one. Most of our lives are pretty repetitive day to day, but like we're not experiencing deja vu on a constant basis. When it pops up, it's noticeable, uncanny to an eerie degree. So what's going on here? Well, one idea is that two parallel universes perfectly line up for a brief moment, and a version of yourself from a parallel universe is in the same exact situation, performing the exact same action at the same time as you. Thus, you get that odd feeling like you've done this before.
Number 10. Dreams. One theory with dreams is that we are visiting other realities while we sleep. Dreaming has always been a confusing topic for scientists and theorists because we have never gotten a guaranteed correct answer as to what exactly dreams are or why we even get them. One of the bigger theories surrounding dreams is that when we are dreaming, we are actually getting a glimpse into multiple parallel universes and what's happening there. By dreaming, we get to know what other versions of ourselves are doing in their respective universes. So yes, unfortunately, one time you did go to school naked. Sorry. Psychologists think that during dreams we turn information into multi-dimensional design based on our consciousness. Some believe that dreams are a way of our other selves reaching out to us and communicating with us, and it's an interesting theory because you have to take into consideration lucid dreaming and how some people have claimed to go to different realms while dreaming. Now, perhaps there exists advanced technology in other universes that allow people to reach out to their other selves. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I kind of believe this. I've had dreams where I go through my day as normal, and then the next day when I wake up, everything that happened in my dream happens in real life. Is that another version of me trying to warn myself of future events? Who knows, but it is trippy. Number 9. Black holes. Now, some people think black holes are actually portals to other dimensions. This theory was originally put forward by Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking believed that black holes are actually portals to another dimension or parallel universe, and that anything that gets sucked into a black hole is actually transported to the other dimension. It has already been scientifically proven that black holes have two openings, so it is pretty plausible to assume that whatever's at the other end might just be a separate reality. Either way, I think we should test it out and see if it really is. And guess what? I volunteer as tribute. Number 8. The Cosmic Bruise. In 2017, scientists at Durham University discovered a weird cold spot in our universe. This cold spot is sometimes referred to as a bruise, and the scientists who discovered it believe that it might have come into existence after our universe collided with another and created an astronomical catastrophe. A controversial claim by Laura Marshini-Houghton is that it could be an imprint of another universe beyond our own, caused by quantum entanglement between universes before they were separated by cosmetic inflation. Laura said standard cosmology cannot explain such a giant cosmic hole and made the hypothesis that the cold spot is the unmistakable imprint of another universe beyond the edge of our own. If true, this provides the first empirical evidence for a parallel universe, though theoretical models of parallel universes existed previously. It would also support string theory. The team claims that there are testable consequences for its theory. If the parallel universe theory is true, there will be a similar void in the celestial sphere's opposite hemisphere. What could come as a bigger surprise since then, though, a few other cold spots have turned up. So if what those guys at Durham University are saying is true, then our universe has collided with not one, but multiple universes. This is the biggest piece of evidence pointing to the existence of multiple alternate realities or parallel universes. Number 7. Deja vu. No, not the Olivia Rodrigo song, though it's a bop, but the actual experience of deja vu. Deja vu is French for already seen. It's the phenomena of feeling as though one has lived through the present situation before. It is an illusion of memory where, despite a strong sense of recollection, the time, place, and context of the previous experience are uncertain or impossible. Approximately 2/3 of surveyed populations report experiencing deja vu at least once in their lifetimes. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I experience deja vu pretty often, and it can sometimes be terrifying. Now, there is no scientific explanation to this, but one theory has led many to believe that deja vu occurs when you do something in sync with your counterparts from other dimensions. For example, a person getting deja vu while getting coffee might be due to their alternate universe self getting coffee at the same time as well. It's both cool and creepy, and to be honest, this makes a lot of sense to me. Number 6. Time travel. Yes, time travel could take us to parallel universes. Time travel is the hypothetical activity of traveling into the past or future, but I truly think it's real. Why? Well, for some proof, there are a lot of celebrities who seem to look exactly like past historical figures. Take Anne Hathaway and her husband, Adam Schulman. They are just the tip of the iceberg. Now, everyone's heard of William Shakespeare, but what you probably don't know about the famous English playwright is that he had a wife named Anne Hathaway. But that's not the scary part. Adam looks exactly like William Shakespeare. Perhaps him and his wife came back for some unfinished business and to provide the world with more art. Everyone on the internet believes this, as people have said they came back for each other, eternal lovers, and history hath a way of repeating itself. Get it? Wink, wink, nudge. Yeah? No? Okay. And one fan claims Shakespeare made a deal with his wife. I get to be famous in this life, and you get to be famous in the next. I truly do believe this. The resemblance is uncanny. There's so many other celebrities as well, so it seems like people wanted to come back to Earth as other people, or they were born as the wrong person in our universe. Number 5. Third man syndrome. Sometimes when people get into really bad car accidents, there's some sort of supernatural phenomenon that happens to you. You may have heard of this, as a video is now going viral on TikTok, and it's called third man syndrome, and it's an unseen presence that appears during traumatic survival situations that talks to the victim, gives them practical advice, and encourages them. Now, this has happened to many people, and we don't know if it's some sort of angel speaking to them, or if it's another version of themselves from a different dimension telling them not to give up. Regardless, it is creepy. Now, under one of these posts, someone said, "As a paramedic, I can concur. Many patients swear people were there and no one's around." So what can explain this? I'm not too sure, but it's comforting that someone is there with people experiencing such tragedies. Number 4. Shifting realities. So in 2020, there was a lot of talk on TikTok about people shifting realities as we were in lockdown. People were in realities where they were famous, were a part of Hogwarts, and so much more. But is there any truth to it? Reality shifting is a term that refers to the spiritual practice of transferring or shifting one's consciousness to an alternate reality, and or the attempt to alter the reality one is experiencing and transcending one's physical confines to visit alternate universes. Now, reality shifting, also known as shifting, is a form of manifestation rooted in Buddhism and Hinduism. So it's not just something made up by teenage girls. The techniques include hypnosis, transcendental meditation, biofeedback, binaural sounds, affirmations, and subliminal stimuli. So if you can shift to another universe, then that means there are parallel universes, right? Number 3. Hadron Collider.
The world's largest particle accelerator was turned on once again in the year of 2022. After 3 years of upgrades and maintenance, it immediately observed 3 exotic particles for the first time. The Large Hadron Collider, LHC, is now up and running and breaking records for the highest energy particle collisions ever performed. It's pretty exciting, with the teams involved searching for more information on the so-called God particle, the Higgs boson, and signs of dark matter. And this machine could test for other dimensions. Now, how would they test for extra dimensions? One option would be to find evidence of particles that can exist if only dimensions are real. Theories that suggest extra dimensions predict that in the same way as atoms have low energy ground state and excited high energy states, there would be heavier versions of standard particles in other dimensions. These heavier versions of particles, called quasi-clean states, would have exactly the same properties as standard particles and so be visible to our detectors, but with a greater mass. If CMS or ATLAS were to find Z or W-like particle, the Z and W bosons being carriers of the electroweak force, with a mass 100 times larger for instance, this might suggest the presence of extra dimensions. Such heavy particles can only be revealed at high energies reached by the LHC, so we could potentially find out if there are indeed other dimensions. Number 2. Quantum immortality. Quantum immortality started as a thought experiment in the late 1980s and later was more fully developed by physicist and cosmologist Max Tegmark. It suggests that we can die many times throughout our lives. With each passing, our consciousness moves, slides, jumps, or shifts to the closest timeline, very similar to the one where we died. These ideas and application of the concept lie outside of the realm of science, but have been embraced by many of those who believe they have experienced such a shift. While science and skeptics may not agree, others are not so quick to dismiss the idea. There are reports of near-death experiences which validate these beliefs. Now, most people do not realize that they have jumped until later unless the event is particularly traumatic. Sometimes they can trace the shift back to a specific global tragedy or experience. Small differences are sometimes noted, and the result of earlier choices or decisions in which manifest in the new reality. And coming in at number 1 are psychics. Whenever psychics tap into the spirit world, you're tapping into a different timeline, as their time is completely different than it is here, so that's why sometimes predictions don't come true. This is like when the 2016 presidential election happened. They were sure that Hillary was going to win, but then she didn't. Due to this, people think we shifted timelines in 2016. Now, one reason for the sudden shift, well, back in April 2016, CERN Weasel made it into the super collider I was talking about before and chewed its way through a 66,000 volt transformer. Workers found the charred remains later. Now, that definitely could have messed a lot of things up. All I gotta say is, stupid weasel.
At number 9 is filling gaps in the scientific understanding with the multiverse. There are a whole ton of things that just don't currently add up in our cosmic playground. Take dark matter for instance. We literally have no idea what it is or how it operates, and yet it is the explanation for why our universe keeps expanding at an accelerating rate. You see, galaxies are supposed to be getting closer together thanks to the mutual pull of gravity. And yet, here's this basically undetectable force that's overcoming the force of gravity and doing so at an exponential rate. This discovery implies the existence of a dark energy that counteracts gravity on cosmic scales, and yet, the only thing that we know about dark energy is its name. Now, scientists have attempted to come up with a few different explanations for the origin of this counter-gravitational energy. One explanation is that, according to quantum theory, subatomic particles are constantly and spontaneously manifesting themselves into existence and then annihilating themselves out of existence. This process should endow the vacuum of space with energy, which could explain the whole, expanding universe thing. However, that energy would be 120 orders of magnitude too large to explain the anti-gravity effects that we witness in space. And so, the multiverse concept ties those ideas together in a neat little bow, claiming that perhaps in this universe, dark matter just isn't as strong as it should be, whereas in other universes, it's literally tearing everything apart. But that's not the only gap in our knowledge that the multiverse theory fills so gracefully. For instance, take string theory, which says there are like 11 different dimensions, but I don't know about you, but I only see 4. Now that's a bit odd, but some scientists think that maybe string theory isn't just about our universe, but every possible universe out there. Also, have you ever considered about how everything just seems just perfect for life to exist in our universe? Like the strength of forces between particles and how atoms stick together? Well, as it turns out, if there were more dimensions like string theory claims to be, then things definitely would not work out for life like it does here. So this multiverse idea could mean there are lots of different universes out there where life totally didn't exist at all. And maybe, just maybe, we're in one of those very few special ones where everything just worked out just perfectly for life to thrive. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is the Bicep 2 gravity waves. So there are these crazy cool ripples in space called gravitational waves. They're like essentially messages from way back when the universe was just a baby. Now these waves are discovered by the Bicep 2 team, which holds some seriously mind-blowing hints about the existence of our universe. So you know how after the Big Bang things expanded super fast? Well, these waves suggest that the expansion wasn't a one-time deal. It's almost as if the universe hit the fast forward button multiple times, creating not just one, but a bunch of universes. And get this, the other universes might not play by the same rules as ours. They could be totally different, maybe with extra dimensions, like I previously mentioned, or bizarre stuff we can't even wrap our heads around. Plus, they might be way far off, like beyond what we can spy on with even the best space gadgets. So what Bicep 2 found was like stumbling upon a map to a whole new multi-dimensional world, hinting that our universe might just be a tiny piece of something unimaginably vast. At number 7 is the AMS experiment positron excess. A whole bunch of antimatter particles were discovered just hanging out in space. Picture them as the mirror image of the regular matter that makes up everything we see around us. We're still trying to figure out exactly where these particles are coming from, and one explanation is neighboring universes. Allow me to explain. Now there's a super cool gadget called the Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer, or AMS for short. It's perched up there on the International Space Station, keeping close watch on antimatter particles. And so the AMS found something really strange. A way larger number of these opposite twin particles, known as positrons, than anybody expected. The discovery was a cosmic clue pointing towards the existence of dark matter. So dark matter is the invisible substance actually making up a whopping chunk of our universe, even though we can't actually see it. Scientists have a hunch that when dark matter particles collide, they produce the very positrons that the AMS is spotting. This discovery of excess positrons could potentially be an evidence at the existence of another universe. You see, if dark matter exists and behaves like scientists think it does, then it could be a bridge in the understanding of our universe with the multiverse. But unfortunately, we can't know for sure because science just ain't there yet. We're in the middle of this cosmic puzzle trying to figure out if these positrons are truly pointing us towards dark matter or if there's something else entirely going on in the universe. At number 6 is the cosmic microwave background. So the cosmic microwave background radiation is kind of like a glow that fills the entire universe. It's the afterglow of the Big Bang, the moment when the universe burst into existence. Now scientists study the cosmic microwave background to understand the early universe better. It's incredibly uniform, but there are tiny temperature fluctuations within it. These fluctuations have helped scientists map the distribution of matter in the early universe. Now, here's where this idea gets intriguing in terms of the multiverse idea. You see, some researchers have observed that these strange, odd cold spots in the cosmic microwave background don't fit expected patterns. These spots are unusually big and cold compared to what current models predict. Now, one hypothesis is that these cold spots might be evidence of collisions between our universe and another parallel universe. The idea is that if our universe collide or interact in some way with another, it could leave a mark on the cosmic microwave background, manifesting as these peculiar cold spots. It's a speculative idea and there's no definitive proof yet, but still, the study of these anomalies in the cosmic microwave background adds fuel to the conversation about the possibility of a multiverse.
Coming in at number 10 is ancient Indian texts, Vedas. Some individuals have suggested that certain verses from ancient Indian texts, such as the Vedas, contain descriptions that could be interpreted as references to parallel universes. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Vedas are a collection of ancient sacred texts that form the foundation of Hindu religious and philosophical traditions. They are considered the oldest and most authoritative scriptures of Hinduism. The Vedic texts mention that there are unlimited universes that exist simultaneously, but each is a separate and enclosed unit. Now, they also mention that there are different dimensions within one universe. Those dimensions are accessible in different states of consciousness. They say there are also replicas of the spiritual world that can be perceived with spiritual vision, but not mundane vision. The locations are in the material world and seem material to mundane vision, but spiritual to those with spiritual vision. Now, there are also areas that are not accessible to humans, we just don't have clearance to enter them. Now, how they are protected, we don't know, but they are geographical areas that we just don't see or have access to. They are inhabited by other people who don't cross over into our domain, so there you have it. Number 9. Mirror worlds in Celtic folklore. In Celtic mythology, the other world is the realm of deities and possibly also the dead. In Gaelic and Brittonic myth, it is usually a supernatural realm of everlasting youth, beauty, health, abundance, and joy. It is described either as a parallel world that exists alongside our own, or as a heavenly land beyond the sea or under the earth. The other world is usually elusive, but various mythical heroes visit it either through chance or after being invited by one of its residents. Now, they often reach it by entering the ancient burial mounds or caves, or by going underwater or crossing the Western Sea. Sometimes they suddenly find themselves in the other world with the appearance of magic mist, supernatural beings, or unusual animals. Number 8. Greek mythology. There are a lot of Greek mythology stories, but we're going to focus on Persephone and how parallel universes are seen in her story. Persephone in Greek religion, daughter of Zeus, the chief god, and Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, was the wife of Hades, king of the underworld. In the hymn to Demeter, the story is told of how Persephone was gathering flowers when she was seized by Hades and removed to the underworld. Upon learning of her abduction, her mother Demeter and her misery became unconcerned with the harvest or the fruitfulness of the earth, so that widespread famine ensued. Zeus therefore intervened, commanding Hades to release Persephone to her mother, but because Persephone had eaten a single pomegranate seed in the underworld, however, she could not be completely freed, but had to remain 1/3 of the year with Hades and spend the other 2/3 with her mother. Now, the story that Persephone spent 4 months out of each year in the underworld was no doubt meant to account for the barren appearance of Greek fields in full summers after harvest, before the revival in the autumn rains, when they are plowed and sown. Now, it can be argued that the underworld is a parallel universe, and I believe it. Number 7. Parallel universes and Kabbalah. According to Kabbalah, all existence can be divided into 4 worlds: the world of emanation, the world of creation, the world of formation, and the world of action. Although they are referred to as worlds, in reality these aren't separate planets or galaxies. Rather, they exist right here together with us, but in another plane of reality. It's said that even when we have not done an action but merely said we would do one, the action has already been taken in the world of speech. Now, there is a story of 2 Mitzvah citizens who were involved in a bitter dispute. Once, while they were angrily having it out in the local synagogue, one shouted to the other, "I will tear you apart like a fish." Rabbi Israel Baal Shem Tov, who was at the synagogue at the time, told his disciples to form a circle, each taking the hand of his neighbor, and to close their eyes. He closed the circle by placing his holy hands upon the shoulders of the 2 disciples who stood nearest to him. Suddenly, the disciples cried out in fright. They saw the angry man actually ripping his fellow apart, just as he had threatened. He said, "No potential ever remains unrealized. A person's every act, word, and even thought has an effect. At times the effect is concrete and tangible, at times it is more subtle, and can be discerned only by a finer, more spiritual eye."
At number 5 is the 5th force and muon's magnetic moment. Muons are like the heavier cousins of electrons, playing a big role in the world of subatomic particles. Scientists at a Fermi lab do this cool experiment where they trap billions of muons in a ring and watch them closely as they move. Now, these muons, they have a magnetic quality that make them wobble as they zip around the ring. Now, in the science world, there's this thing called the standard model that predicts how these muons should wobble. But here's the twist. Sometimes what they actually do doesn't match up with the standard model's predictions whatsoever. Now, here's where it gets interesting. See, if these muons act differently, it might mean that there's something else out there, a mysterious particle, maybe a whole new force of nature influencing these muons. It could also mean that there's a whole new other set of rules in a parallel universe interacting with our own. Think of it as us glimpsing into another reality, something where the rules just don't line up with what we have here. At number 4 is quantum entanglement. In quantum physics, particles get tangled up together, and when that happens, their properties become connected. Even if one of these particles ends up super far away, what happens to one particle affects the other instantaneously, breaking the rules of how we understand space and time. Now, how does this link back to the multiverse? Well, some scientists wonder if quantum entanglement could be a sign of parallel universes being connected to one another. The theory goes that if particles in our universe can be entangled, then what's stopping them from being entangled with particles in other universes too? Like they're communicating across different realities. So if particles can be connected across vast distances in our universe, maybe the entanglement stretches into other realities, hinting at a network between different versions of a reality. Might be a mind-boggling idea that quantum entanglement might be a key that unlocks the door to the existence of parallel universes. And number 3 is Leo Broussard at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. So scientists at Oak Ridge National Labs have been on the hunt for something pretty wild, which is the multiverse itself. They're using neutrons, tiny subatomic particles that hang out in atoms, to find clues about this idea of a mirror neutron, a right-handed universe, kind of like the opposite of our left-handed one. It's kind of like an experiment where they're trying to break into the Stranger Things, you know, the upside down there. They're shooting these neutrons into a tube, hoping they'll sneak through a blocked end into the other side, basically looking for signs of where a parallel universe doesn't line up with our own. But unfortunately, there hasn't been any luck so far. The scientists admitted that they haven't spotted any evidence of parallel universes or strange interactions with these neurons flying through what they call the dark sector. They're not giving up though. More sensitive experiments are in the cards, so we might hear more about this experiment in the future. The scientists made it clear that finding something new here doesn't automatically mean that they've found a whole new dimension. It could just mean that they've got a better grasp on the particles that make up our own universe. At number 2 is the multiverse created in the lab. In 2013, researchers delved into the realms of parallel universes at the University of Maryland and College and Towson University. Through an unconventional experiment involving metamaterials reminiscent of invisibility cloaks, they sparked the birth of multiple universes within a lab-created multiverse. These alternate realms, referred to as Minkowski spacetimes, elegantly incorporate time as a fourth dimension, aligning neatly with Einstein's special relativity. Astonishingly, the setup behind this cosmic wizardry is surprisingly straightforward, relying on a solution of cobalt-immersed kerosene. It's a captivating testament to human ingenuity, demonstrating that we can, in a sense, engineer our own universes, offering tantalizing hints at the existence of parallel ones, because if we can simulate our own universes, who's to say that our universe isn't simulated? And at number 1 is the Anita experiment, the scientific discovery that proves single-handedly the existence of parallel universes. Imagine a remote research station in Antarctica where scientists diligently hunt for cosmic rays. Now that's intriguing on its own, but it gets better. See, naturally, they had their instruments facing the sky, but then these researchers suddenly detect not one, but 2 signals shooting out of the ground beneath them, defying all logic. You see, these rays of neutrinos are supposed to come from supernova, so it's super improbable that these rays are passing through the Earth without coming into contact with this single particle of matter, only to land on a tiny weather balloon in the sky. So to make sense of this, scientists delved into over 40 papers offering a buffet of explanations, like dark matter, elusive particles called sterile neutrinos, and then, the grandest of them all, a parallel universe, essentially a mirror image of our own, but where time runs backwards. This audacious idea isn't pulled out of thin air. It's rooted in actual science, a theorem which hints that alongside our universe, an antimatter universe stretches backwards through time before the Big Bang. But let's tap on the brakes here, because there are more down-to-earth theories that have surfaced. So hold your antimatter horses, because as it turns out, it's more likely that these signals were reflected off the ice or skipped off subglacial lakes. The truth, it seems, is more grounded in reality, reflecting high-energy particles, not parallel dimensions. Sorry y'all, I mean, unless you want to go ahead and put away Occam's razor.
The Mandela effect is when a group of people misremembers a historical event or person. Writer and researcher Fiona Broom coined the term over a decade ago when she created a website detailing her recollections of former South African President Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. Now, Nelson Mandela did not die in prison in the 1980s. After serving 27 years in prison, Mandela became president of South Africa from 1994 to 1999, and he died in 2013. Despite this, Fiona thought she remembered international news coverage of Mandela's death in the 1980s. She found out other people who shared these false memories as well, and it turns out there are so many other accounts of these so-called false memories resulting in the Mandela effect. Or maybe, just maybe, these aren't false memories, but correct memories. What if the people whose memory is different is from a parallel universe, and and they merged with another universe, our universe. Now, the merge wouldn't be that noticeable, except for where some people remember the Monopoly Man with a monocle, or it being the Berenstain Bears instead of the Berenstain Bears. Up next is time travel. Is time travel real? I think so. And if people can travel from different points of time, what's to stop them from traveling from parallel universes? Nothing. Right? Now, there have been plenty of cases of people claiming to see time travelers throughout history, not to mention there's whole articles online dedicated to celebrities who have past lookalikes that claim that they are time travelers. Now then, there's actually people out there who claim to be from the future. Now, though we can't really confirm their claims, one time traveler known only as Noah claims to be from the year 2030. One of the most shocking things that he claims is that us humans will be able to communicate with aliens. He said, "We've confirmed the existence of aliens, but they're not incredibly intelligent. Right now, the government has communication with them, but we don't know it. In the future, we are actually in contact with aliens that are just as smart as humans, although we have many more advancements over them," he said. Now, many people doubted him, so he took a polygraph test to prove that he was telling the truth, and he passed. So, is this legit? Moving on to cryptid sightings. Many people have claimed to and even have recorded proof of certain cryptids. But are these cryptids just from a parallel universe and sometimes they slip into our timeline? I think so, as some of the things people have claimed to capture and see are wild. First there's Bigfoot, then there's the Loch Ness Monster, the Jersey Devil, skinwalkers, and shapeshifters, you name it. Now, there's no way these mythical creatures are real in our universe, so what if they've just traveled over? What if in another universe we're at war with different Bigfoots and that's why they hide from us here? I mean, there are some trail cameras that capture some pretty out of this world looking creatures. Well, maybe it's just because they aren't even from this world, just some food for thought. Then there's the city in the sky. In 2015 in China, thousands of residents in 2 areas reported separately that they saw a huge city in the sky. Onlookers, some who are said to have captured the bizarre event, were said to be mesmerized as a towering city of skyscrapers appeared from the clouds. It's believed that a parallel universe opened up for a brief amount of time. Now, obviously, other theories also exist, like the phenomenon of it being called a mirage or a secret weapon to create holographic images. Now, the mystery has sent conspiracy theories into overdrive. Now, there were previous reports of a similar sighting in China in 2011. The YouTube channel Paranormal Crucible said in a video report, the footage captured by a local resident appears to show a huge city floating in the clouds. The apparition, which was witnessed by hundreds of shocking residents, only lasted a few minutes before completely disappearing. The channel speculated it could be the result of a Project Blue Beam test, as Project Blue Beam is a prolific conspiracy theory which believes that NASA will one day simulate an alien invasion on Earth or the second coming of Christ through holograms. My opinion though, I definitely think this was one of the portals opening up by accident. Now we have the man from an unknown country. In July 1954, a man arrived at Tokyo Airport. On checking his passport, they found out that the man was from a country called Torid. Now, as far as immigration officers were aware, Torid was not a country that existed anywhere on Earth. When they confronted the man, he grew frustrated, and he insisted to them that Torid did exist and had for nearly 1,000 years. When presented with a map and asked to point out the country, the man is said to have pointed to Andorra between Spain and France, as he quickly became angry and confused. Now, also, the currency bills he was carrying were from an unknown bank, the company he claimed to work for had no knowledge of him, and the hotel he claimed to have a reservation for had never heard of him either. Believing this strange man may have been a criminal, Japanese officers put him up in a nearby hotel for the night while they conducted a more thorough investigation. Now, 2 guards were stationed outside the man's room to make sure he didn't escape, yet when the next morning came, the officers went to speak with the man and they were shocked to find that he had vanished without a trace. Now, these circumstances have led many to the conclusion that the man had accidentally crossed into our dimension from a parallel one. Now, in this parallel universe, Torid really did exist, and the man was telling the the truth. Now, his disappearance is often attributed to him sliding back into his own universe, again seemingly without any intention or explanation. Now there's the freaky case of Lorena Garcia Gordo. In 2008, a woman posted on an internet forum looking for advice explaining some incredibly odd changes in her life that seemingly happened overnight. Lorena Garcia Gordo claimed to have jumped parallel universes. When she originally woke up, she noticed that her bed sheets were a completely different set than the ones that were on her bed when she went to sleep, and her car was not even close to her usual spot. Then when she headed to work, she was greeted by two people who knew her name and were quite friendly with her, but she'd never seen them before in her life before that day. Now, she also discovered that she was assigned to a completely different department in a completely different part of the building that she previously didn't even have access to at work. Then in her personal life, she was still in a relationship with her boyfriend of 7 years, despite having broken up with him 6 months prior. Now, the new boyfriend she'd been dating for 4 months seemingly never existed because someone else answered when she called his number and someone else was living at his address. Now, she genuinely thought that something was wrong with her and went to the doctor, but nothing was physically wrong with her. She then went to psychiatrists wondering if this was all some elaborate hallucination that was triggered by a mental breakdown of some sort, and after being evaluated, they told her that she was of sound mind, and all they can think was that she was just really stressed out. Now, it sounds to me that she accidentally jumped timelines while she was sleeping, but that whole experience there just sounds so scary. Moving on to deja vu. The phrase deja vu is borrowed from French and means already seen. Deja vu occurs when someone perceives that they have already experienced a situation before, and their body feels familiar with the experience and the situation, and it causes confusion. Now, approximately 2/3 of surveyed populations report experiencing deja vu at least one time in their lives, and it happens most often to people between 15 and 25 years of age. Now, we tend to experience the feeling less as we age, and it's said if you travel a lot or regularly remember your dreams, you may be more likely to experience deja vu than others. Now, someone who is tired or stressed may be prone to deja vu feelings too, and let me just say, I get deja vu very often and it is trippy. Now, there's not really any scientific theory for this, but one theory has led many to believe that deja vu occurs when you do something in sync with your counterparts from another dimension. Now, I don't know, it's pretty cool to think about though, in my opinion, and have you ever had deja vu before? Let me know in the comments. On to doppelganger. A doppelganger is a biologically unrelated lookalike or a double of a living person. You might have heard there are 7 other versions of you in the world, or at least 7 other people who look like you. Now, if this is true, these other people could actually be you from another universe, but they somehow made it to ours. I mean, you've all seen the photos of people who look like current celebrities, but they're from the 1800s, right? Or those times when you get mistaken for someone. Now, scientists actually did an experiment on this. The team collaborated with Canadian photographer Francois Brunel, who has been collecting and sharing portraits of lookalikes around the world since 1999 as a part of his I'm Not a Lookalike project. The experiment shows that the lookalike individuals share more genetic variants than randomly selected individuals. Now, the team also found that the resemblance between doppelgangers extended beyond their looks and genetics. Although the study was designed to examine their faces, the team used a very extensive questionnaire, which revealed that physical features such as weight and height also tended to be similar in doppelgangers, as did lifestyle traits such as smoking habits and educational attainment. Now, that is just insane to me. Next up is the dream realm. Dreaming is weird, and we still don't really understand the science behind it, which means that it could happen for a multitude of reasons. Something that other people, and myself included, believe is that when we dream, we go into a dream realm, which is essentially another universe. Then it's thought whatever dreams we have, we actually experience, just in a parallel universe. Now, it doesn't stop there though, because it's thought if you had a dream that came true, it's because it happened to another version of you. Yeah, it's all kind of confusing and weird, but I definitely think our dreams have meaning to them, we just don't fully understand them yet. And lastly, we have shifting realities. During the first months of lockdown in 2020, people started to go a little stir crazy, and this caused them to learn how to shift realities. Now, their words, not mine. Reality shifting is a term that refers to the spiritual practice of transferring or shifting one's consciousness to an alternate reality, and or the attempt to alter the reality one is experiencing, and transcending one's physical confines to visit alternate universes. The techniques include hypnosis, meditation, biofeedback, binaural sounds, affirmations, and subliminal stimuli. So if you can shift to another universe, that means there are parallel universes, right? Now I wish that I could shift to the reality where I am a multi-millionaire. Now I've never tried shifting and I don't know how much I believe it. Could it just be their imagination? I don't know, but some people swear by it.
And we're kicking off this list with Anita, the Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna. Anita is a high-tech balloon-type object used by NASA hovering over Antarctica. It was designed to track particles that are the result of collisions with high-energy neutrinos, which enter into our atmosphere from deep within space. Just a few years back, though, Anita discovered something kinda strange. It detected neutrinos that a group of scientists suggested could be a glimpse into a parallel universe. The strangeness comes from the fact that these particular neutrinos seem to come from below the Earth's surface instead of from space, like all the other neutrinos the device was designed to pick up. Now, I'm not sure if you guys know this. I am not a scientist. However, the consensus amongst scientists is that this was pretty odd. This led to some hypothesizing that maybe these particles were slipping into our world from a parallel universe, where the rules of how things work might be completely opposite. Researchers have pondered that this potential parallel universe might be running time backwards. Imagine events unfolding in reverse, like rewinding a movie. So instead of coming from out there, they're coming from up there. Now, this is just speculative, but it's a possibility, and that's pretty cool. At number 9, we have a really cool story posted to Reddit by user udominate123. It seems like two parallel universes may have crossed over here. That's one possible explanation anyway, unless this is all just an amazing coincidence or, you know, just isn't true. Anyways, it goes like this. My company was located inside a large business park, and there were walking paths that wound through buildings, crossed roads, and spanned the entire park. Every day during my lunch break, I would take a walk on those paths to get a little exercise. One day, I was walking. I noticed a car driving towards me that was the exact same color and model as mine, which isn't too odd in itself, except my car had a very unique vanity plate on the front that this car also happened to have. As the car got closer, I noticed it had a VIP pass from an event I recently went to hanging from the rear view mirror, the same as my car. I watched very closely as it drove by, and I saw myself driving, clear as day, wearing the exact same shirt I was wearing at the time, the same glasses. Since the car was inside the business park, it was moving no more than 15 miles per hour, so I got a very good look. The person driving looked forward the whole time, so they didn't appear to see me. It drove around a corner and was gone. I tried looking in the lots of the buildings where it was driving towards, but I didn't find any of them. My car was in the exact same spot I left it, unmoved. Next on the list, we have the man from Torid. Now, this story has reached urban legend status at this point, but it's still a fascinating tale. The year is 1954, and Tokyo's Haneda Airport is buzzing with activity. In walks this dude, but when the customs folks asked where he's from, he drops a bombshell. Torid is his answer. Now, wait a minute. You're probably thinking, like, well, where the heck is Torid? What is that? Well, according to this mystery man, he pointed it out on a map. Torid is exactly where Andorra is. Customs officers scratched their heads as the man became increasingly frustrated, never having heard of Andorra before. Torid? Nowhere to be found though. So authorities stick him in a hotel room, guards stationed outside, but come morning, the guy has completely vanished. And not only that, but his passport and personal documents that were in custody were also nowhere to be found all of a sudden. So the idea here is that this guy slipped into our world from a parallel universe just for a short time, a glitch in the matrix, if you will, and hopefully he woke up the next morning in his own universe and got to head back home to Torid and tell his version of events. Maybe there's another version of me shooting a video exactly like this right now, talking about the strange Japanese airport that didn't know where Torid was, pointing out a mysterious place called Andorra on the map instead. Number 7, Deja Vu. Not gonna spend a lot of time on this one because you all know what it is and it's been talked about to death. but it is one of those phenomena that scientists have yet to definitively explain. There are only hypotheses, and that's pretty interesting, especially seeing as this is an incredibly common occurrence. You'd think, like, with how often this happens to everybody, that they'd have, like, cracked the code by now. Never gets old either. Like, every time deja vu hits me, it's just as magical as it was the first time, and I always have to announce it. Like, no matter where I am or how inappropriate it may be, I gotta be like, hey, I just had deja vu. Sorry, go on. Continue lowering the casket. I don't know, I just can't help it. It's so darn cool. Let me know some of your weirdest deja vu stories down below. I'm fascinated.
Number 6. Egyptian mythology. The Egyptian universe, created on Mayat, which has several meanings including truth, justice, and order, was fixed and eternal. Without it, the world would fall apart, and there were constant threats of disorder requiring society to maintain it. Inhabitants of the cosmos include the gods, the spirits of deceased humans, and living humans, the most important of which was the pharaoh. Now, Egyptians saw the earth as flat land, the god Geb, over which arced the sky, goddess Nut, and they were separated by Shu, the god of air. Underneath the earth was a parallel underworld and undersky, and beyond the skies lay Nu, the chaos before creation. Duat was a mysterious area associated with death and rebirth, and each day the sun god Ra passed through Duat after traveling over the earth all day. They believed that there were multiple universes. Number 5. Alternate realities in Sumerian epics. A Sumerian myth known today as the Gilgamesh and the Netherworld opens with a mythological prologue. It assumes that the gods in the universe already exist, and that once a long time ago, the heavens and earth were united, only later to be split apart. Later, humankind was created, and the great gods divided up the job of managing and keeping control over the heavens, earth, and the netherworld. The origins of humans are described in another early 2nd millennium Sumerian poem, the Song of the Hoe. In this myth, as in many other Sumerian stories, the god Enlil is described as the deity who separates heavens and earth and creates mankind, as the deity who separates heavens and earth and creates humankind, which is pretty cool. Number 4. Parallel worlds in Aboriginal Dreamtime. Dreamtime, or dreaming for Australian Aboriginal people, represents the time when the ancestral spirits progressed over the land and created life and important physical geographic formations and sites. Aboriginal philosophy is known as the dreaming and is based on the interrelation of all people and all things. The past of the spirit ancestors which live on the legends are handed down through stories, art, ceremony, and songs. The dreaming explains the origin of the universe and the workings of nature and humanity. It shapes and structures life through the regulation and understanding of family life, the relation between the sexes, and obligations to people, land, and spirits. Now, due to their customs and beliefs, they have sustained a rich cultural heritage. In most stories of the dreaming, the ancestor spirits came to earth in human form as they moved through the land. They created animals, plants, rocks, rivers, mountains, and other forms of the land that we know today. These ancestral spirits also form the relationships between Aboriginal people, the land, and all living beings. Now, once the ancestor spirits created the world, they transformed into trees, the stars, rocks, watering holes, etc. Now, these are sacred places of Aboriginal culture and have special meaning because the ancestors did not disappear at the end of the dreaming, but remained in these sacred sites. The dreaming is never ending, linking the past, present, and the people and the land. Number 3. Greek philosophers. The earliest hints of the multiverse are found in 2 ancient Greek schools of thought, the atomists and the Stoics. The atomists, whose philosophy dates to 5th century BC, argued that the order and beauty of our world was the accidental product of atoms colliding in an infinite void. The atomic collisions also give rise to an endless number of other parallel worlds less perfect than our own. Now, unlike the atomists, who describe reality without recourse to a divine being, the Stoics saw the cosmos to be imbued with internal, indestructible soul. But how to explain the apparent change and destruction we see? The universe recycles itself anew. According to 3rd century BC Stoics philosopher Chrysis of Soli, the world would eventually deteriorate into a sort of ethereal nothingness, but then regenerate again into material form, only for the cycle to repeat itself for infinity. The atomists held that the atomic collisions give rise to an endless number of parallel worlds less perfect than our own. Now, although there are sharp differences between these 2 Greek philosophies, the respective ideas of Celtic and parallel universes are not necessarily necessarily mutually exclusive. Number 2. Buddhism. In the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Buddha speaks of a multiverse as represented in a garland of flowers, encompassing all of reality, as each universe flower reflects all others. This sutra was spoken just after the Buddhist enlightenment, and it describes the vision where a universe is present in the tiniest mote of dust. Buddhas and bodhisattvas present in the tiniest particle on a single blade of grass or grain of sand. Matthew T. Fisher, the resident priest in Reno Buddhist Center, said our Saha world of suffering is what we see with our limited eyes. With wise and compassionate eyes, other universes are visible. Transcendent Buddha fields are interpenetrating realities with this one, the many flowers in the garland. These universes await our discernment through insight we can gain when we follow these teachings. Make a fundamental shift in your paradigm, reveal new worlds totally foreign to everyday perception, and make a quantum shift and open to the multiverse. And coming at number 1 is Mayan cosmology. Mayan cosmology identifies 3 realms of existence: the upper world, underworld, and the natural world, but these 3 realms are intricately connected. The world tree is at the center of the Mayan cosmos and links the 3 realms. The world tree supports the firm beliefs within Mayan culture that all things, both living and inanimate, have a spiritual essence. This provides the Maya the opportunity in which their natural bodies can interact with the sacred supernatural. Thus, Mayan rituals of communication that exist between the realms are critical for their survival because they see the universe as interconnected, relying on interdependent relationships to keep the world balanced. Without birth, there's no life, without life, there's no death, and without death, there is no rebirth. Number 10. Theory of relativity. In our everyday lives, we experience 3 spatial dimensions and a 4th dimension of time. How could there be more? Einstein's general theory of relativity tells us that space can expand, contract, and bend. Now, if one dimension were to contract to a size smaller than an atom, it would be hidden from our view. But if we could look on a small enough scale, that hidden dimension might become visible again. Now, imagine a person walking on a tightrope. She can only move forwards and backwards, but not left or right nor up or down. She only sees one dimension. Ants living on a much smaller scale could move around the cable in what would appear like an extra dimension to the tightrope walker. You know how they explain the upside down in Stranger Things? Yeah, well, it'd be the same thing. So does that mean that the upside down really exists? Because I do not want to come face to face with a Demogorgon or Vecna. Number 9. Dan Cooper. One of the most famous heists in history occurred on November 24, 1971, when a man who identified himself as Dan Cooper bought a one-way ticket to Seattle on Northwest Orient Airlines from Portland, Oregon. After the plane was airborne, Dan handed the flight attendant a note. At first, she just put it in her pocket without looking, but then Cooper told her, "Miss, you better look at that note. I have a bomb." He opened a briefcase and revealed red-colored sticks surrounded by an array of wires. He told the flight attendant to write down everything he was saying, then take it to the captain. The note said, "I want $200,000 by 5 p.m. in cash exclusively in $20 bills put in a knapsack. I want 2 back parachutes and 2 front parachutes. When we land, I want a fuel truck ready to refuel. No funny stuff or I'll do the job." FBI agents assembled the ransom money and Seattle police obtained the parachutes from a local skydiving school. When Dan claimed his demands were met, he allowed all passengers and some of the crew to exit the airplane. He told the remaining crew to refuel the plane and chart a course for Mexico City while staying below 10,000 feet. Then, somewhere between Seattle and Reno, he jumped from the plane with the money and he was never seen again. Despite an expansive manhunt for over 45 years of searching, no conclusions have been made as to the man's identity or his fate after he jumped. It's called one of the greatest cold cases in FBI and US history, but many think he was from a parallel universe and just wanted some money. I don't know, but it makes you think. Number 8. Backwards parallel universe. A group of NASA scientists working on an experiment in Antarctica have detected evidence of a parallel universe where the rules of physics are the opposite of our own, according to a report. A cosmic ray detection experiment has found particles that could be from a parallel realm that were also born in the Big Bang. The experts used the giant balloon to carry NASA's Antarctic Impulsive Transit Antenna, or ANITA, high above Antarctica, where the frigid dry air provided the perfect environment with little to no radio noise to distort its findings. A constant wind of high-energy particles constantly arrives on Earth from outer space. Low-energy subatomic neutrinos with a mass close to zero can pass completely through Earth, but higher-energy objects are stopped by the solid matter of our planet. That means high-energy particles can only be detected coming down from space, but the teams Anita detected heavier particles, so-called tau neutrinos, which come up out of Earth. The finding implies that these particles are actually traveling backwards in time, suggesting evidence of a parallel universe, so there you go. Number 7. Mirrors. Mirrors are thought to be portals to another world, and some believe this is another dimension, but those who believe in ghosts believe it's a portal to the other side. Now, many cultures still hold on to their superstitions that exist concerning mirrors, ghosts, souls, and death. The act of covering your mirror overnight is something that is done in multiple cultures and across many beliefs worldwide. As Anthony Perrotta from AP Astrology explains, mirrors are often seen as a portal into the liminal space and the other world, and have the power to reflect what is happening deep in our subconscious. However, while bedroom mirror ideas are fabulous for reflecting light in the daytime, they are at their most powerful when paired with sleep, say experts. There's also a notion that if you look into a mirror too long, you can see your face distort, and there's always that thing where people are scared their reflection is gonna move when they are not. And why would the reflection move? Because it's someone from another dimension trying to copy us. Number 6. Doppelgangers. A doppelganger is a biologically unrelated look-alike or double of a living person. You might have heard the phrase, there are 7 other versions of you in the world. Now, a study of look-alikes, unrelated people with faces so similar they could pass for identical twins, has found that such pairs share genetic traits. Scientists studied 32 pairs of individuals with uncannily similar headshots who were part of a long-running project by a Canadian photographer to document these faux twins. The 16 pairs found by computer analysis to have the most similar features also shared more genetic variants than the less similar pairs, the researchers concluded. Now, that's not a huge surprise because researchers are already using genetics to predict face shape. The fake twins did not share DNA methylation patterns, chemical marks controlling gene expressions that are shaped by our environment, reinforcing the dominant role of DNA alone plays in determining our appearance. Now, could this be an appearance of you who's accidentally in the wrong universe? Maybe. Maybe.
Number 6, the WOW signal. The WOW signal is a mysterious radio signal picked up in 1977 by an Ohio State University radio telescope, lasting just 72 seconds. It's called the WOW signal due to the astronomer Jerry R. Iman's scribbled exclamation on the data printout. The signal's frequency and intensity were unlike any known natural source, sparking speculation about its origin. Now, the most exciting theory is that it could have been extraterrestrial in origin, but some have even suggested it might have come from a parallel universe. The strange signal has only ever been captured one time, so perhaps whatever created this signal dipped into a black hole somewhere and is in a completely different universe now. But more dull explanations like passing comet or space debris have also not been ruled out, so it is definitely no definitive proof or anything, but pretty interesting all the same. It's worth checking out the recording too. Pretty spooky sounding. Number 5, the Mandela effect. This is another one that's just like with Deja Vu, gets talked about a lot, so I won't bore you with it for too long, but it's fun to talk about. Mandela effect is when a lot of people remember something one way, turns out to be different. People think they remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison, but he actually didn't. Some think it's because of parallel universes where different versions of reality exist at the same time, and the idea is that our memories might be crossing over from these other universes, causing this kind of confusion, a jumbled mess. There's a bunch of parallel worlds, each slightly different. Sometimes things just get jumbled up and we remember stuff from a different world. Now, that's just one possible explanation for this phenomena. Some say it's just how our brains work. Our memories are not the most reliable, and for whatever reason, there are certain things our brains collectively seem to picture one way and it just doesn't turn out to be the case. Really depends on which Mandela effect you're talking about, I guess. There are tons of different ones. Regardless though, it's another bizarre occurrence without a definitive scientific explanation. I still say my favorite one is the Pikachu's tail having like black on the end. That's one I seriously, everyone tells me, oh, when I was a kid I had a Pikachu doll with like a black, his tail was black on the end. I could swear. You can never find pictures of it unless it's like a I don't know, unless someone just made one. I don't know. Anyway. Next up we have ghosts. Now this one is pretty kooky, but ghosts don't come up much when the subject of parallel universes are brought up, so I just thought to change things up, I'd throw them in here. Now, ghost stories are not really taken seriously by the scientific community, which is fair enough. There's really no evidence that proves these types of stories to be legitimate, but at the same time, there's not really any definitive way to disprove ghosts outright either. It's kind of an unfalsifiable thing, and again, that doesn't mean they do exist, but it is possible. Unlikely, but possible. So, do ghosts exist in an alternate dimension adjacent to our own, which crosses over from time to time? Are they stuck in some sort of dimension where time doesn't move forward like it does here, and they're just trapped in a never-ending loop, appearing the same way they did before they died? Is that what happens when we die? That's a pretty terrifying idea. And number 3, we have unexplained disappearances. Unexplained disappearances happen all the time. We talk about a lot of them on this channel. People who go out one day, never to be seen again, just gone without a trace. Now, obviously, the most likely explanation here is foul play. Someone grabbed them and is just very good at concealing evidence. But is that the explanation for every one of these cases? Maybe not. It's just people have been known to disappear without a trace either. It's everyday objects too. So, are there small pockets of space that lead to parallel universes that these people or things just happen to fall into occasionally? I told a story about a month back about a pillow I had that just vanished from the couch and then reappeared months later. Like, stuff like this happens. It's incredibly weird. Check out my top 10 evil entities people encountered in apartment blocks video for that full story, by the way. Next up, we have a story posted to Reddit by user Julia Keck, and she describes an experience that, if true, could possibly point to a parallel universe brushing up against our own for a brief moment. She writes, "When I wake up, the first thing I do is get on my computer, and so I did that one morning. I decided I'd check my subscription feed on YouTube, and the first video that showed up was just some mundane story time type of video. Unfortunately, I don't really remember what it was or the author anymore. I don't usually watch this type of stuff, but for some odd reason, I had an urge to click on it and see what it was, and so I did. I watched a few seconds of the video unamused, and then suddenly got a huge feeling of deja vu. I felt like I'd watched the video before, but the weirdest thing is, I started reciting it. I knew every word said in the video. Why the F would I know it? I don't remember things so clearly when I have deja vu. I freaked out because watching this video before was impossible, as it was uploaded 20 minutes before I watched it. I even checked if this was some sort of re-upload or remake, but it wasn't. And that's gonna bring us to our final point here. We have the phone call. This one was also posted to Reddit by user Torby Lilies. The story goes as follows. I was at work when my dad called my phone. I was worried that something was wrong because a few minutes earlier I had called him and he couldn't make out what I was saying, but he knew it was my voice and I sounded agitated. All he could make out were a couple of times where I used some of the nonsense nicknames I use for my parents' pets. So he thought something had happened to the dogs. I told him I hadn't called him, but he didn't believe me and thought I was pulling a prank. Later on, when I saw him in person, I showed him that the last outgoing call I had made to him had been about 5 days before, but he had definitely been called by my phone earlier that day because his phone showed an incoming call from my number, and the call had gone on for about 3 minutes before it cut off. So, I mean, this would freak the hell out of me, right? It's the fact that whoever this mystery caller is sounded exactly like them, according to their father, and that they knew the names of their dogs. Was this a parallel version of this Reddit user who found themselves in another universe and tried calling their father in a panic, not knowing what was going on? Or had someone managed to hack their phone and knew exactly how to impersonate their voice and knew the names of their pets? I don't know. You decide in the comments.
Number 5. The multiverse. Yes, the multiverse is a real thing, and it wasn't just created for the MCU. The multiverse is a hypothetical set of all universes. Together, these universes are presumed to comprise of everything that exists, the entirety of space, time, matter, energy, information, and the physical laws and constants that describe them. The different universes within the multiverse are called parallel universes. One common assumption is that the multiverse is a patchwork quilt of separate universes, all bound by the same laws of physics. The concept of multiple universes, or a multiverse, has been discussed throughout history, with origins in ancient Greek philosophy. It has evolved over time and has been debated in various fields, including cosmology, physics, and philosophy. Although some scientists have analyzed data in search of evidence for other universes, no statistically significant evidence has ever been found, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The anthropic principle suggests that the existence of a multitude of universes, each with different physical laws, could explain the fine-tuning of our own universe for conscious life. Number 4. The Mandela Effect. The Mandela Effect is an observed phenomenon in which a large segment of the population misremembers a significant event or shares a memory of an event that did not actually occur. Fiona Broom, a paranormal researcher, coined the term to describe collective false memory when she discovered that a significant number of people at a conference she was attending in 2010 shared her memory that Nelson Mandela died in prison during the 1980s. In fact, the former president of South Africa was released from prison in 1990 and was very much alive at the time of the conference. This has caused an uproar on the internet, with people discussing their experiences. Specific examples include the quote from the Snow White fairy tale, which most people believe say "mirror, mirror on the wall," but is actually "magic mirror on the wall." The Star Wars movies encounter a similar circumstance with the quote, "Luke, I am your father." The real line reads though, "No, I am your father." Furthermore, many people collectively have false memories of how the Bearstein Bears book series title is spelt. Most people remember the name as Bearstein Bears using an E instead of the correct A in the last part of the name. But it was an E, I swear. Similarly, many people believe the name of the popular hot dog brand, Oscar Mayer, is spelled Oscar Mayer using an E in the last name instead of the proper A. It's said for the people who remember things incorrectly were in a different universe and then somehow got transferred to this universe. I don't know, but the Mandela Effect is extremely real and scary. Number 3. Glitches in the Matrix. What is this? Well, some people believe that we live in a simulation that is controlled by other people in a different universe, a parallel universe. These glitches are events that seem comparable to the effects of errors in computer programs or their execution. Some examples of these include objects vanishing and sometimes reappearing, people being seen by different witnesses at different locations at the same time, or not being seen in places where they should be, aka people vanishing, often for considerable amount of times, often with multiple searches, then reappearing and claiming they never left the spot. Changes in everyday familiar objects, and time slips and time freezes, where people interact with different time periods, or where they observe all movement and noises cease over a relatively short or larger area. Some glitches have even been caught on camera. Now, the idea that we are just test subjects and they control everything terrifies me, and if you guys were listening, I would love it if you could add $1 million to my bank account, please. Number 2. Real experiences. There are real stories of people experiencing themselves seemingly switching universes. One online user told this story: "It's been about a week and I am still trying to wrap my head around the fact that I might have died in another timeline and just jumped to this one." Background: I was driving down PCH, a very long highway up the coast of California, at 8:15 p.m. exactly. And I know this because I called my mom to let her know I was stopping to watch the sunset. As I'm watching the sunset, I hear a car's horn blaring. I turn around and see a car coming straight towards my car and myself, and then suddenly I'm sitting on the ground. Very confused, a headache is starting to come on, but I wasn't hit. My car wasn't hit and I'm still breathing. Obviously freaked out, I get back up and check my phone to call my mom because this is just crazy, and I notice it's 8:13 p.m. I checked my phone to see if I actually did call her, but there's no history of it. I shake the nerves off and decide to just get home quickly, thinking maybe that was foreshadowing an event I did not want to relive. Once I'm home, my mom asked me why I called her and just hung up. I asked what time, she said 8:15 p.m. There's still no history of me calling her on my phone. Am I crazy, or did I just jump timelines? And guess what, people? There are thousands of stories just like this. It can't be a coincidence, can it? And coming in at number 1, we've created our own universe. Yep. You heard that right. In 2013, researchers at the University of Maryland, College Park, and Towson University had reported that they created multiple universes inside a laboratory-created multiverse. The researchers created a metamaterial like those used in fashion invisibility cloaks that when light passes through it, multiple universes are formed within it. These universes, called Minkowski spacetimes, are similar to our own, except they more neatly tie up Einstein's theory of special relativity by including time as a fourth dimension. While this is rather extraordinary, the experimental setup is actually quite simple, though definitely rather unconventional. The multiverse is created inside a solution of Colbit and kerosene. So yeah, we made our own universe, thus proving there are parallel universes.